Welcome back to Let's Get Weird About, the season where it's all Scott picks, because, you know, sometimes you get a burr in your brain and you just think about it for like years on end, even when you hate something, and then you go back and you're not sure if you hate it or you like it. Anyway, we're going to talk about Guy Ritchie's Revolver, a movie that, fuck man, I don't know what to do with this, but luckily I've got Hera Alexander with me this year. But luckily I've got Hera here with me to hold my hand and make some sort of sense out of this movie. So here we go. A lot of people like it, like for sure. Like that's a real thing. That is a not uncommon experience. I forgot that I got ADHD diagnosis when I was like 15. Like I got the diagnosis. Yeah, it was 15 because I was a freshman in high school. So like I got the diagnosis. They put me on Ritalin because that was the one at the time. And it turns out that my particular version of ADHD and or just my own physiology, I do not stand stimulants. They make me feel like I'm having a panic attack even when I'm not having a panic attack. Racing heart, terrible. So I went on Ritalin and it fucking fucked me up. So I got off of the Ritalin, and my conclusion from that was like, well, I guess I don't actually have ADHD then because the meds didn't help me. And so then I just suffered through the rest of life. And then like a year and a half ago, I was like, oh no, I absolutely have ADHD. I should go see if maybe another medication works for me. And I tried a bunch of them and none of them do. But like, at least I know, like, for real. But that's fine. Like having the diagnosis by its, even like without meds, is super useful to like understanding like how my brain works. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It was funny. I got diagnosed and I started talking to people and I was like, yeah, so I learned I have ADHD, and it wasn't universal, but like 80-90% of the people that I talked to were like, did you not know that?
Yeah.
No, I don't know if you noticed, but I have it. I couldn't see it.
I like there's a joke from Taylor Tomlinson where she got diagnosed with bipolar disorder, and she talks about her friends were all like, or her best friend was like, oh yeah, your mental illness was like your middle name. I didn't know what it was, but I was pretty sure you had one. And oof. And I'm like, no, that's a very like, that's super common. Like a bunch of my friends, I'm like that too. And the moment that I was like that with people are like, oh yeah, no, that makes sense. Like I wouldn't have said anything before, but the moment you say that, yes, of course.
They're like, like noticing a theme in something and you point it out and everybody else is like, oh yeah, of course.
Yeah, of course.
No, but like some of those people I knew when I worked at Games Workshop.
Yeah.
And they were like, did you not know? Like you worked for Games Workshop for 2 years. I didn't see you finish painting a full unit.
Yeah.
In fact, I think I only saw you finish one figure.
Yeah.
And it wasn't a big one.
Yeah.
I was like, you know what? I need you to shut up. Okay. Like
it's like, this isn't, I've only just figured this out. Don't make me feel stupid on top of also being, yeah. Yeah. No, that, well, like also like, I don't know, like kids aren't taught like how to think about them, like how to be introspective. Like that's the thing. It's also a skill that you have to pick up as you mature, and like it's not something everybody gets.
Yeah, and I've also had this thing where this kind of sounds probably familiar to a lot of people.
Sure.
But I don't always feel emotions directly. I have to sit there and look back.
Oh,
and be
no.
like,
yeah. Atafaxia. Yeah.
Yeah. Like you have to sit there and go, wait, hang on.
No.
I think I was upset by this.
Yeah.
And it wasn't so upset that I could feel it viscerally.
Yes.
So I have to like sit there and go, I think that's bugging me.
Yeah. That is like so common. Yeah.
And it was one of those things where it was like people in movies and TVs would be like, yeah, I was just redirecting because I was really mad about this. And I just thought that was like a thing that movies do.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then I slowly over the course of however many years realized like, no, that's how people like can be like, they can see it. And I'm like, I just don't.
Oh yeah. No, it's incredibly common. It's super common with people who are neurodivergent, and then also extra common with anybody who was socialized as a boy when they're growing up. So like,
interesting.
Yeah. So like our society does not allow young boys to show emotion. And so you train yourself not to show it. And in doing so, you actually like train yourself not to feel it as well, because it's easier not to show it if you don't feel it. So you think that you're not experiencing the emotions, and then you like don't ever learn the process of how to like identify them and actually like live in them, and then it causes mental illness later in life. Like that's all of toxic masculinity, like in a nutshell, right there.
I would go so far as to say you're pressured to not have the emotion.
Yeah, exactly.
And that leads me to a whole rant about stoicism that I will have to save for another time. I've read a little bit of stoicism because of the college I went to.
Yeah.
And let me just tell you, the short version is, I think you should not aim for stoicism as a goal.
Sure.
I think you adopt stoicism as a reflex.
There are versions of stoicism that absolutely could be a bad coping mechanism. You 100% could depending on especially what internet guru you're getting stoicism from, absolutely could be like telling you the wrong thing. But but what's interesting is that stoicism, at least the versions of it that I have when I did my philosophy stuff in college, it was like one step over from like Zen detachment. It's like that version of it that I saw, where it's like it's not that you don't experience the emotions, it's that you understand that you're not beholden to them, which is like one step over from Zen detachment. And detachment from like Eastern mysticism, and we're going to talk about Eastern mysticism later on when we get to it, is honestly really like can be very, very, very healthy. But like stoicism isn't aiming at that same thing, and it's so easy to go off into just like, no, repress everything, shove it down into a ball where it can turn into cancer for you later.
I as John Mulaney said, I'll just hold everything right here and then one day I'll die. No, I both agree and disagree.
Sure.
Because I can't make a decision to save my ass. So one part is I actually don't believe you can fully control your reactions to things. I just don't think that that's a thing.
No, you're absolutely right in that. You cannot control your reactions. You can only control your reactions to your reactions.
Yes,
at best.
And I think that you can also, to some extent, slow down your reactions so that you can give yourself time to think.
Yeah.
But I think trying so hard to just put a cap on them will make the outburst so much worse. But also, I would say that a lot of what I saw, at least in Epictetus, felt, even at the time, even at the time when I did not have any diagnoses to my knowledge, I didn't know I was, I didn't even know I was queer. And even at the time, I was like, this is codified PTSD.
Sure.
This is somebody saying, I am in a bad situation. What can I do to not suffer the most? Yeah, and
that's a completely reasonable read.
Completely withdrawn. I would be interested to see some other things. I'm not so interested that I want to watch the philosophy tube video on it, which is probably the only way I'm going to consume any more philosophy.
I mean, I'll watch anything Abigail Thorne makes. I don't care what she's talking about. But
have you listened? I assume you've listened to Kill James Bond.
No, I have not. I'm in a
debuff hand activity. Yep.
Yeah, sure. Well, no, and also I'm in a phase of like not listening to as much podcasts lately because everything's a big slider, and I moved it way over into music lately. So I'm just behind on podcasts.
And that would be Aristotle. That's the big slider thing.
Sure. Yeah.
No.
But yeah, like, I don't think stoicism is a goal. I think that at best, stoicism is a useful stepping stone to something better, is the way I would say it. So like, and not even always then. It's like at best, it's a stepping stone to go to a different philosophy that'll work better for you.
It's a Band-Aid solution. Yeah. It's how do I get once I get out of this, I can be something else. But in order to get out of this, I need to be stoic.
Yes.
Sorry.
Like control, you're absolutely right about controlling your emotions. The more you try to like withhold an emotion or not feel it, if you're like resistive to it, it like at best it just goes away and will come back later at some later date that you're going to have to deal with it eventually.
Yeah.
Or in many cases, it gets worse over time as like all of these things, every time something happens and you feel the emotion and you push it down, those things just add on and add on and add on until you fucking crack. Yeah. And so like, 100%, you can't just force it down, which is why I was saying like the real goal is something more like Zen detachment, where you're like, I see the feelings, I feel the feelings, I recognize them and like accept them, but that I'm not beholden to them. And I do not have to like, I do not have to let the emotions rule me in a way that like can be also very destructive in a different way.
I would say that there's also some aspect to Stoicism of accepting misery.
Yeah.
And not, I can't say not seeking joy, because that's not necessarily the truth. But chances are, if you're adopting Stoicism, you don't have the option for that.
Yeah.
Like Epictetus, I think, was a slave. And he didn't sound like he had a great life.
There's two different kinds of accepting suffering, because like you 100% are absolutely going to have suffering in your life. Like there is no escape. There's no human escape from the aspect of suffering. Like every person suffers in some way. So there is an important part of like, there's an important truth within there, which is that you do need to accept that suffering exists and that you will feel bad things are going to happen and how you're going to have to figure out how to deal with them. That does not mean that you have to accept all suffering in all ways. Like it does not mean that like you have to just be like, when something bad happens, you just have to be like, I guess something bad has happened and that's just my life now. Sometimes that will be the case, and it is still part of the life cycle to figure out what things are meant to that you're supposed to have action to, and like there's actual like active. Yeah,
there's a bit in Epictetus that I want to reread it just to reread this, but I think also part of my dislike for Stoicism was brought by everybody around me.
Oh, sure.
Well, all the guys around me, which was most of the people, because this is that kind of college.
No, it's a philosophy that attracts a certain kind of guy because it's a good coping mechanism that is acceptable for him. Yeah.
People talking about how cool it was and how great it was. And I just have this like really annoying like hipster streak where if everybody likes something, I have to hate it.
Oh yeah.
I have to hate it.
100%.
That's how I started to like Doctor Who. And then I met fans and I was like, actually, it sucks.
Nothing will ruin your experience with something more than meeting the fans of that thing.
I dislike Inglourious Bastards because by that point I had heard so many Quentin Tarantino fanboys that I was like, I just fucking hate him. Like, and that's not fair to him.
It is.
There are other reasons. There are reasons to dislike him.
Oh yeah,
I have those reasons.
Yeah,
but I'm not going to like. They feel bad coming from me because I've already made up my mind before finding them.
Yeah.
So I try not to get really like weird about it because I know I have that impulse in me. But so the thing about Epictetus that I wanted to reread is he says something about like if a man says shave my beard or he'll kill me, then what? Like then I'll shave. Like it doesn't. Like at the time, I think there was a sort of a social thing around the beard.
Sure.
And he is like, what do I care? Like, as long as I survive. But I think there was also something in there about like, but if I want the beard more than my life, I might as well just keep it. Like it sort of simplified decision making in a sense.
Yeah.
But I can't remember if he's saying you have to pick which option you want, or if he's saying like, then just shave the fucking beard so you survive. And I want to reread it just to remember that, but I also just don't feel like hunting it up.
I don't think you got better uses for your time. Honestly, it's fine.
I'd rather reread Montaigne for the 400th time, who, by the way, is great. That is one of the few philosophers that when people start talking about how great he is, I'm like, yeah, I'm right there with you. A lot of people hate Socrates. I totally understand that. I kind of like him.
I mean, like
he's an asshole.
Like all things, you should have a what's the word? An alloyed love for things. Like you should never be able to like think about something uncritically, or things that you think about uncritically are less useful to you as a brain. And philosophers are useless to you if you just accept everything they say. So you have to hate them a little bit. And in that regard, now we can talk about Guy Ritchie. Oh, we can. Yeah. I started off a series of events that led you to watch the movie Revolver twice in 2 days. So how much penance do I owe to the universe for that?
Scott, I would like to leave this off with a question, if I may.
Yeah.
What did you make me watch? Okay, so
yeah.
Do you have questions? Because we will get to them, but I want to say for anybody listening, I'm probably going to immediately dive into spoilers. Yeah, so there's going to be no buffer zone here.
This is also a movie I think that spoilers are also good. Like there are some movies that are about an experience, and I think that the more you come into Revolver ready to meet Revolver where it's at, the more you can get out of it. I'm not necessarily saying it's going to be a good movie at the end or that you're going to like it, but that you will get more out of it if you understand where it is.
I'm not going to lie to you. I don't think this is a good movie. However, I very much appreciate it for what it's trying to do.
Yes.
And for what I think Guy Ritchie is trying to do, which is change up his style and change up his storytelling. This is Guy Ritchie, and this is going to sound insane to anybody who has never seen this movie.
Yeah.
This is Guy Ritchie at his David Lynchiest.
Yeah.
And that should be a huge compliment, but it's kind of not, because he doesn't really stick the landing. But at the same time, I quite like it because it's not, he's trying something new.
Like Revolver is weirdly, it's not like, okay, so like when you look at Guy Ritchie's body of work, like I look at everything and I'm like, there are much better movies on here. Like Lock, Stock and Snatch are both better movies by like that I will find much more enjoyable to watch. I'm not as big fan of the Sherlock Holmes movies, but I know that they're other people's favorite movies. There was another one that I really liked that I cannot remember. Oh yeah, I really liked The Man from U.N.C.L.E. as well.
I haven't seen it.
Yeah, it's very Guy Ritchie. It feels very. It's going back a little. I mean, it's very much in the Sherlock Holmes style, but it's Cold War and it's fun and it's action packed and stuff. So like, there's these other movies which I think are along every metric better movies, but the fact that he has done Revolver makes me like Guy Ritchie more than the fact that he did any of the other ones.
Oh, yeah. So this is a different situation.
Yeah.
But years ago when I was in high school, I was really into Metallica because I was in high school.
Yeah.
And around that time, I can't remember if it was after or if it was like while I was still in high school, they released Saint Anger, which is a terrible album. It's so bad.
Yeah.
But something that Metallica did early on when Cliff Burton was still alive was they changed up their sound at least a little bit between every album. They changed up their style a little bit. They changed, like, the first couple albums are either very different from each other or just a little bit different from each other. And then he died in a really horrible way.
Yeah.
And everything just sort of became tomato soup.
Yes.
Like, you know, no matter where you went in the bowl, it's tomato soup.
Mm-hmm.
Which is fine. Like, I'm not trying to pressure them to change whatever they don't want to change. But and then Saint Anger comes out and it's a very different sound. And that's pursuing that feeling of like, I want to change things up. I want to do different things. And I really respect that. I don't respect Metallica for other reasons.
Yeah, sure.
But like
that absolutely demonstrates an amount of, like, I hate this phrase, but I can't think of a better one, artistic integrity.
Yes.
Where like it is a bold decision that is bad, which means it's definitely not for commercial reasons and for like people liking them reasons. It was because they wanted to do it. And like, that means that when you see them do other things, that means that gives you some amount of like feeling like they're authentic about the other things they do as well, because they're willing to make decisions that are unpopular. And I think Revolver is the same way.
Yeah. I really there are things that happen in Revolver that I was like, okay. In a better movie, you know, this would be great. I'm not very good at telling where beats and stories go all the time.
Oh,
but,
yeah.
Like even I can sit there and go, they should have, if he wanted to add this huge ending on the end, you know, which we'll get to.
We're going to have to talk about versions for a while because it takes a minute. Yeah.
And if he wanted to add that, he should have had, you know, other stuff towards the front to like foreshadow some of it.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact that he was willing to put this together tells me that there was a time in Guy Ritchie's life where he was like, I don't want to make the same movie over and over. And tried, and people panned it.
They fucking hated it.
Which, admittedly, I get it. Like, it's not a good movie.
I would charitably call. I saw one reviewer said this is a movie for a very small audience, and I think that's the best version of the movie, which is like, most people aren't going to get it, and the people who do get it aren't necessarily going to love it, but it is for them.
Also, Andre 3000 is in it, and like, you know, I'm not very good at telling when somebody's acting, like, especially in movies, is particularly good or bad. I thought he did fine.
He did fine, and he's not in a role that requires all that much.
His role actually would have required him to not act very much.
that's a character holding so much a lot close to their chest, so like you don't need to do a lot. Yeah.
There is a so talking about acting, there is a scene and there is like a couple frames that I would describe as probably the best acting in the movie.
Okay.
And it's minor facial changes in Sorter's expression right before he's killed. And it was in a scene that is not in the director's cut, I think.
Yes. Okay. So I guess now is as good a time as any to talk about versions, because I think ultimately which one you watch is not super important because they're broadly trying to do the same thing. But I found this incredibly confusing because the internet told me different things at different points. So here is my understanding as far as I can take it. There's some things that are called like the original cut. There's some things that are called the director's cut. There's some things that are called the like UK hybrid cut. I'm going to advise you to ignore all of that. As far as I can tell, there are two cuts of the movie, and we're going to call them the longer and the shorter cut. Because one is 100 is an hour it's 115 minutes and one's 101 minutes. So like 10 minutes are cut out of one version of the movie. And as near as I can tell, what happened is that Guy Ritchie made this movie in 2005. It had a limited release in the UK and in also parts of Scandinavia. And fucking people hated it. And this is the longer cut, as far as I can tell. So it like the critics all panned it. It did not do well in the theaters. The general regard was that this movie is not good. So before it came to America, he took it back and he spent another 2 years. He delayed the release by 2 years, and he recut the movie and he cut about 10 minutes out of it. And this is the one that has the different ending. It just ends in a different spot, basically. It ends with they move a conversation that from sort of before the very climax of the movie to after the climax of the movie, and they end on that conversation instead of having a whole different thing where Maka kills himself, right? So it ends instead on the confrontation between the first confrontation between Jake and Maka, and they're broadly trying to say all of the same things. But I think
the first confrontation. I'm sorry, so sorry. Are you talking about like the one that leads to the elevator scene?
Yes. It ends on the elevator scene and then he confronts Maka at the bottom of the elevator, and Maka does the fear me thing, and then he walks away.
Having been recently sainted, according to the imagery.
Yes. And I will say, I think that version of the film is lesser than the longer version of the film. It might be more palatable to audiences, but I think that the first version, the longer version, is doing more of the things that it's trying to do. It is more itself.
I would agree. I would actually say
the only thing good about this movie, I think that you might as well like watch the unalloyed version, the one that is trying to do all of the stuff, is following up as best it can on all of the stuff it's trying to do in a way that the other one sort of pulls back and doesn't follow through in the same way.
There is a reveal. Yeah. And after that reveal, the movie does feel like it drags, which is a shame because that's my favorite part of the movie.
That's the whole reason I like the movie, is the reveal.
Yeah. Leading up to that point, it's just sort of, hey, what's going on?
Yes.
Why? I'm actually sort of reminded of Bunraku. Because it's sort of everything is very shallowly justified.
Yes.
Characters are sort of very like weakly established, if established at all.
Yeah. No.
And then the movie pretends like they are established.
Yes.
And then after the reveal, you just care about the people that like the movie is about.
Yes.
And suddenly it becomes much more
it's a different movie at that point.
I won't say cerebral, but yeah, it's a very different movie at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the movie I would have loved to see more of.
Yes.
I wish that they had more but I mean, Guy Ritchie does love having multiple threads. So the first part of the movie just being one thread, it just shows how weak he is at having just the one thread.
And although that being said, he does do, this is the first time he did that. And I think he might get better at the single thread thing as time goes on.
Yes.
Because his later movies don't suffer quite so badly at that.
Yeah, this is also a 20-year-old movie, so
yes, it is.
Like we're cutting him a lot of slack here.
Yeah. Okay, so on the off chance that anybody is listening to this and has not and doesn't expect to go, they're not going to stop this podcast and listen to and watch the whole movie. I'm gonna give the bare bones breakdown of what this movie is. We start the movie following Jake Green, played by Jason Statham, who is
Sorry, really important. Jason Statham has long hair in this, and it took me forever to recognize him. He looks terrible.
He looks like shit. It is so great.
Sorry, continue. That's it.
In a movie full of bold choices, their decision to make Jason Statham look so fucking bad I actually really love.
If he had smiled, I would have just been like, who's this person with Jason Statham's voice?
Yes. So we follow Jake Green, who looks like shit. He's been in prison. He's out and basically trying to take revenge on the man who sent him to prison, Dorothy Maka. This is not super well explained. That's fine. You don't really need to follow why things are happening. He goes to Maka's casino and plays a game of chance with them. And because Jake has the special formula, we will learn this later. He has a special formula that helps him win every game. He goads Maka into losing a bunch of money to him. He loses a bunch of money. He's about to leave. On his way up, he had taken the elevator because he's very uncomfortable with elevators. We'll get to what that means later. On the way back, he says, I'm going to take the stairs. And he takes the stairs. And he collapses on the stairs. And actually kind of a beautiful scene. I kind of like the stair collapse scene.
It was a scene out of a different movie is what it felt like. Because
all of the scenes are from different movies in this movie.
Oh, yeah. You're sort of sitting down to watch a Guy Ritchie movie.
And you're not going to get
and suddenly there's like symphonic music and he's like collapsing in this really
slow motion
shot.
way. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and you're like, and it's jarring to the point of actually being a little funny.
Yeah.
But the scene itself, it looks great.
Yeah.
The scene itself looks great.
Yeah. So he collapses. They take him to the doctors. The doctors are like, hey, we don't know what's wrong with you. Go home, get some rest. On his way home, he is attacked by Maka's goons. His little gang of guys are all killed, except for his brother, who I think gets away. His brother wasn't there, so his brother's still alive. And he is saved by a mysterious man he'd met a few minutes earlier who had handed him a note that says, take the elevator, which he didn't do. And this is played by guy, his name is now escaping me. He's been a mobster in every movie you've ever seen.
When you see him, you'll go, I know who that is.
He was Big Pussy in Sopranos. That's that guy. That guy is like, he saves him from the attack and is like, come with me. And he takes him to a little like chess club / billiards club where that guy and Andre 3000, they, because Andre 3000 is in this movie, they explain to Jake that he is going to die in 3 days without their help. If he wants their help, he has to give them all of the money he's got, and also he's going to have to do everything they say without any questions. He then has it. Yeah.
Maybe I missed it. Maybe I skipped it. I actually don't remember them saying, you'll die in 3 days without our help. I vaguely just...
No, they say specifically, you will die in 3 days. We can save you. Here's how.
Okay, cool.
And so he has an independent confirmation that he's about to die of some sort of unexplained, like literally the audio fades out explaining what he's going to die of. It's because it's not important. So he goes back to these two dudes and is like, okay, I will do what you say because I want to live. And they take all of his money and they are explain that they are loan sharks and they're going to loan out all of his money. And it's going to be very painful for him, and he's going to hate what they're doing. But it's going to be the way they save him. And he's like, fuck, okay, fine. And they do. That is also what they do. And they also interrogate him about his life, in which he explains that he was sent to prison. He ended up in a jail cell between, as he describes, a master chess player and a master con artist. So he is in an isolation cell between these two guys. And for some reason, because he's between the two of them, he gets to intercept the messages between the two of them as they have
don't look at it. Don't look at it directly. It happened.
And
which, by the way, this is also him being in solitary confinement for 7 years.
We're going to talk. Yeah, so we'll talk. There's actually some stuff going on here that I think could have been saved. It didn't do it in the movie. We're just getting through it. So these two guys have figured out the ultimate formula to win the ultimate game and to do the ultimate con. And they share it with him, and they say that they're going to take him with them when they escape. And then they escape and they leave him behind. And in fact, while they're in the intervening time, they steal all the money he had stashed, and he comes out of jail 2 years later with nothing.
I thought it was a much shorter period of time than that. I thought it was like 2 weeks later.
No, it's 2 years.
2 years. Man, I missed half this movie. Apparently,
that does not matter. It does not matter.
Well, also, something that I find interesting and something that I will probably want to return to
Sure.
is that they are said to disappear pretty much without a trace.
Yes.
And I don't mean like no trace of how they got out, but no trace that they were there in the cells, which doesn't come up in the movie, but it will come up in this discussion.
No, yeah, because the movie's not literal. If you're going to be charitable to it, this movie isn't literal.
Yes.
So he comes out, but he's got their con formula. So he starts winning games of chance and making money over his hand over fist. And he's super wealthy at this point. And that's where he gets back to the beginning of this movie, that he has more money than he has, quote, more money than he could ever spend. But he's out for revenge on Maka is kind of the place where we've begun this story. Probably I'm going to get events slightly out of order here because we start getting into the point where the order of events breaks down between the two versions. But he is cured, so to speak, of whatever ailment after 3 days. He does what they say and he does not die. And
there's a scene where a doctor is like, well, we must have been mistaken. You're still not well. And then you don't hear the rest of it, but
because it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So he then has a personal revelation in the form of a scene where he walks into the road and is hit by a car in beautiful slow motion and falls through the windshield. And then time backs up and he is not hit by the car. And instead he calls Avi and he calls Andre 3000 and Big Pussy and says, okay, explain it to me. Explain me what's going on here. And they eventually do, after he gets chased around by some thugs in a scene that doesn't matter, and
really doesn't, with some weird ADR in it.
Yes, and it's also there's a bunch of weird stuff in this movie. We will get bogged down so hard if we try to talk about every little weird choice in this movie. So
continue, please.
He ends up on a building on the top of a building as Andre 3000 and Big Pussy hit golf balls off the top of it, and they explain the reveal of the movie. What this movie is about is shit I didn't even mention up to this point. We have been hearing Jake's narration this whole time. There's a narrator to this movie explaining the thoughts going in Jake's head all of the time. I don't want to go in the elevator, fuck Dorothy, blah, 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 blah. We've been hearing this whole time. In this scene, they reveal that
real quick. Alongside this, Maka has been doing things because Guy Ritchie can't stick with one thread, and that's fine. We love him for it. And Maka goes to get goes to work with somebody named Mr. Gold.
Yes, who's the biggest, scariest criminal of all time.
Yeah, he sends a representative. Yeah, who is they're all extremely powerful. Blah 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 blah. Gets a powder. Quotation marks. It's probably coke, I assume.
It doesn't. It's just it's generic drugs.
It legitimately does not matter. Yeah. During some of the other scenes with Jake, etc. They are stealing that powder, which I thought was great. I quite liked that. Yeah. It's sort of the casual thing that's happening. Yeah. And then Maka goes to another group to get the powder for Mr. Gold. Yes. And they sort of steal it off screen, I think.
No, we see it.
Oh, we see it?
Yeah, it's the animated sequence. It's the part with the animation.
That is the animated sequence. The animated sequence is deeply questionable.
We're gonna talk about it, but yeah,
we will. But
we're just talking about what happens. Yeah, you're right.
So they steal that. Yeah. And Maka at this point is sort of he's in deep to Mr. Gold, who again we've never seen,
and nobody ever sees is the point.
Nobody ever sees. Yeah. So and it is actually in fact stated that Nobody sees Mr. Gold, but Mr. Gold sees everything.
Yes. So the Mr. Gold thing, I think is, again, the framing of Mr. Gold I find very questionable actually too. But because here's the thing, most of the specifics of what happens with Maka don't matter. They're not important to this movie. You could in theory skip all of that, and you would still do the thing that the movie's trying to do. But
I would say you need to know that Mr. Gold is an entity and how people are reacting to him, but that's about it.
I think, well, no, we can talk about, I think the movie would be better if they dropped the entire bit about Mr. Gold and just talk.
Okay.
Because
we'll get to that, because there is a line I want to talk about towards the end.
Yeah. So the best thing about this movie is the scene that we're talking about, that before the digression, when I was talking about they're on the roof of a big tall building shooting golf balls off the top of it. And they're explaining to Jake what's going on, and they start reciting back the ideas that he gave to them about the ultimate con and the ultimate enemy and how you trick somebody. And you hear Jake's thoughts, the narrator in his head, being like, this is bullshit, they're trying to con you, and
they're
then
playing head games with you.
They're playing head games with you. And then Andre 3000 responds to the voice in Jake's head and says, is it us who's playing head games with you? And then lays out the thesis of the movie, which is the actual villain of this movie is the narrator that you've been hearing in Jake's head this entire time. That is telling him all of these things about himself and about the world, and that he doesn't have to believe it, and he does not have to be beholden to it. And he, in fact, should do everything he can to kill that voice. The voice inside of his head that tells him who he is and what he does and what to do. Kill it. Fucking put a gun to its head and kill it, is what is their thesis. And he proceeds to then do that as best he can. They give him some instructions. What he needs to do is humiliate himself and give up everything that he thinks he cares about in order to, like, no longer be beholden to the voice inside of his head. And he does that. He confronts Maka and grovels in front. We're now going to describe the original cut of the movie, the UK cut, which I think is probably the one that is more Revolver than the other one. He then goes to Maka and grovels in front of him. He wakes him up in the middle of the night in Maka's apartment and says, "I'm so sorry. I should never mess with you. You know, I am. I was wrong. You're much better than me. You're much more powerful, and I should never have done that." And he like literally gets on his knees and grovels in front of him.
And this whole time, not only is the narrator speaking to him, but we get flashes of like him saying the things that the narrator is wanting him to say.
Yes, exactly.
Which I quite liked.
Yes,
it does get a little silly later.
It gets very silly, but I like it anyway.
Yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. I like it.
So he grovels in front of Maka, and then he specifically gets in the elevator, which is one of the things that the narrator does not want him to do. And in the elevator, he has a breakdown. No, sorry, the elevator itself breaks down and stops on the 13th floor, right between the 12th and the 14th floor, right? And
it's notable because the 13th floor is not listed on the buttons,
right?
So like the light is like half on 12 and half on 14, which I'm sure is significant in some way.
Well, I mean, like 13. Lots of movies have.
Yeah, lots of buildings just don't have.
Yeah, which is weird. Like, I'm not sure if we can talk about Kabbalah later, and I don't. But the real thing is that I don't think this movie is very concerned with Kabbalah actually. So
no.
So he has but in this moment where he's in the broken elevator, he full on confronts the voice in his head, the version of himself that has been telling him this whole time in the movie. He's like, okay, I'm on to you. I know what your game is, and I'm not going to fucking play it anymore. And I don't care about you anymore. Like, I'm not going to listen to you anymore. And to the point where the voice in his head, the narrator, goes fucking apeshit. Like, is like yelling and screaming with demonic after effects things on his voice and stuff. And like, goes full, like, no, you will listen to me, blah, 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 blah. But eventually starts to die down. Like, at one point, like, pretends to kill itself and then comes back and yells at him more. But then he becomes clear that he's no longer beholden to this. And then
and it never comes back after this scene.
Well, it does, except it comes back in Maka. Sorry. Yeah. So at the end of, so the elevator resumes. He opens the doors, and because the elevator has been stopped, Maka has been able to get ahead of him and is now standing in front of him with a gun to his head, and is like, like, how dare you make fun of me? How dare you treat me like an idiot? Blah, blah, blah. And like has a full emotional breakdown in front of Jake, to the point where he's like holding a gun, being like crying, being like, fear me. And Jake no longer fears him.
Not being like actually yelling, fear me, which is, again, a silly scene, but it works. I quite like it.
Yeah. And then so Jake doesn't fear him anymore, and he just walks away.
Yeah, he full zen. Like there's actually really interesting to me framing of when the doors open. Jake is sitting there with I can't remember what most of the colors in the elevator are, except for there's some gold bars to the side of him, and there is just peeking out from behind his head a circle and a little like thing at the top. It's very
very
sort
saint.
of nascent saint energy and symbolism.
Yeah.
And he's just got like this placid look on his face. And it's actually really well done.
Yeah.
I really liked it. The shot is really good. It's a little bit silly, mostly because of the context.
Yes.
In another movie that was all like this, that would be great. In this movie, it feels a little out of place.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean it's a bad scene.
Yes. So he leaves, and at this point, what happens is the voice that had been in Jake's head this entire time, we now start hearing it in Maka's instead. We see a scene the next morning where Maka is revealed for Maka that Jake had made a huge donation in his name to quote unquote charity, and
it's like a generic homes for children.
Yeah, and Maka, you hear the voice being like, "This feels good. I like this. Let's take credit. They'll never know." Like, and you hear like him this whole thing, and then Maka's associate comes in and is like, "Hey, we found or there's still problems. Blah blah blah." It turns out that I think Green is the one behind all of this, and you hear Maka being like, "Fuck him! I'm going to kill him. I'm going to kill Oliver. I'll do Bill." And you can hear like his train of thought, and the same kind of thought. It's not the exact same thoughts, but it's the same the same kind of anxieties and the same kind of like obsession with image that Jake had been doing. Now we hear it in Maka's head instead, and it is revealed where Jake's brother and his little niece are. And so Maka sends his agents off to attack these people. We get a very strange action sequence where we haven't talked. We will talk about Sorter at some point because we have to.
I love Sorter. I'm so sorry, but continue.
We haven't really talked about him because he's not important to what the movie's actually trying to do. Strangely, it's very strange. Anyway, so we get this very strange action sequence where Sorter mostly kills all of Maka's, turns on the rest of Maka's goons and tries to kill all of them, and then and
specifically does so when Maka's second starts like tormenting the child, or threatening to, and Sorter is like, "Hey, fuck this," and just starts murdering
and
everybody.
Murders almost everybody, and then at the very end is like cleaning his glasses, and the last remaining mook walks up and kills Sorter. And
this is also the scene with, in my opinion, some of the best acting in the movie.
Yes,
where you see his face.
Mark Strong is so good.
Change ever so slightly as he like shifts from like thinking about like, what do I do next? I have to concentrate.
Yes.
I have to. That's a gun behind me, and his face doesn't change a lot, but it changes just enough. He's just so good.
So after this scene, at this point, Jake has mostly left the narrative. We've mostly been following Maka and everybody else. Mm-hmm. And then we get a scene. We finally return to Jake. Jake and the two, Andre 3000 and Big Pussy, drive up to Maka's casino, and they sit down in a booth. And we get one last scene between the three of them where he's like, okay, Jake's like, what's going, like, what? Explain this to me again. And Andre 3000 and Big Pussy reveal that they were the men on either side of him in the cells, and that they had figured all of this out, but they knew that he wasn't ready for it back then. And so they've come out and they've gone through this entire process to teach him the thing that they had already learned, which is that you can't be beholden to the voice inside your head. And they continually refer to that as Mr. Gold, because that's the framing of the film. I think that maybe actually weakens part of the message. But anyway, that's the whole point. They explain this whole thing. And then they say, you got one last meeting with Maka, because Maka has, in that last scene where Sorter, the little girl, was taken. So like, you got to go deal with it. And he goes to return the powder and get the girl back, right? That's the final, nominally what the final confrontation is about. He goes up to the floor. There's a little callback where he's in the elevator going back up to Maka, and he's like, I can still feel you in there. I can feel you dying, like talking to the voice again, but like this time sort of displaying mastery over it. And he gets out, and we get this scene where the two of them are across a swimming pool from one another. And he shows up and is like, he's like talking to the little girl, just like he's not concerned with Maka at all. And he's just like, look at me, keep your eyes on me this whole time. And we hear Maka go from the original break that we have to just like complete paranoia about the trouble that he's in with Mr. Gold, and like he doesn't know what to do, and he is freaking the fuck out. And he eventually decides that the only solution is that like Maka can't kill a dead man, so fuck it, I'm gonna go out on my own terms. Puts a gun to his head, and we hear a gunshot, and the thing cuts. The movie ends, no credits even, just done. We are gone. The movie is finished.
It's so a couple things. He's saying gold can't kill a dead man. I think he said Maka can't kill a dead man.
I'm sorry.
And I was like, no,
it's all good.
There is something I do want to back up to.
Okay.
Just slightly before we start going over other stuff, and which is one of my favorite lines in the movie, which is in that last confrontation with that last conversation with Andre 3000, where he says, Mr. Gold is, I think he says something about like he's behind all, like he's in the ads and you see all of this, and he has convinced everybody that they are him.
Yes.
And so if you attack him,
if you attack him to save them,
people will think that if
you attack him to save them from him, they'll kill you to save him from you.
And I think and so I had interpreted this slightly differently. I think your interpretation makes a little bit more sense.
Sure.
Which is I had started to be thinking about, because green and gold, that I was assuming that we were going on like a gold standard, like currency, metaphor.
I guess that's there.
And Mr. Gold representing sort of wealth in general, whereas Mr. Jake Green representing like individual wealth. That
probably does actually work. And if that's the movie that Guy Ritchie intended to make, he's fucking stupid as shit.
So anyways, so that's that thing of like, and it reminded me of who was it that said it? Americans think of themselves as temporarily embarrassed millionaires.
Yeah.
And it just made me think about that, because it made me think about stuff that's happening today.
Yes.
Where, people will say, hey, we got to tax like billionaires, because like, come on, you should not have $100 billion. And people who you have seen use food stamps alongside you will defend him.
Yeah.
And you have to be like, you are not Elon Musk. You are not wealth. You are not a billionaire. And maybe you will be one day. I'm not going to claim you won't be. Yeah. But you probably won't be. And you should that. That's what it made me think of.
Yeah,
of like,
I get you.
People,
I think that reading is not. It's not wrong, because you can interpret art all kinds of ways. It's not the one. It did not ever occur to me. I think I don't like that reading as well.
I think yours is a much better.
You're totally right. There is some of that in there, and I just I wasn't paying attention to the clues that were pointing in that direction. But I want to talk real quick, because I need to take a break before we go in, because we're going to go on for a while. Sorry. So because we barely explained the movie, and we're at like 50 minutes of recording. So, but I'm going to before we take a quick break, I want to talk about the differences between the director's cut, the second shorter cut, and the longer cut, because I've watched them both now. I've watched Revolver twice in 2 days, which I don't recommend.
Don't do that for the record. Don't do that. And in fact, if you're listening to this and you're going, man, this movie actually sounds pretty good, it's not. Kill that thought right now.
It's not good.
Watch it.
Definitely don't go
it.
into the expectation with it being a good movie. It's an interesting movie.
Yes.
We'll talk more about that. So the difference, the primary difference is the ordering and the ending. A bunch of stuff's cut out. There's a whole subplot about how Jake Green has portrayed other people that got him in prison, and how he went through a con to get them all killed by Maka. There's a whole thing about that. Some of that's important. Some of it's fun. It doesn't really matter. But the big thing is that in the shorter cut of the movie, the scenes are rearranged a little bit. So the whole scene where Sorter and the daughter is before the confrontation in Maka's bedroom, before the big revelation about before Jake.
So they kept that.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Right. So that whole scene still is in there. It ends slightly differently. Sorter doesn't die in the shorter version. We just see that moment where he's about to get killed, and then the movie cuts to the next scene. And we never get closure on what happened. But I guess the daughter and the brother are still fine in that version, because they're not addressed again. We cut from there immediately to like them, Jake and Avi being like, one last thing you have to do. You have to go see Green, or go see Maka. And Green goes and has that whole scene where he goes up the elevator he shows up, he confronts Maka, gets in the elevator, has the confrontation with the voice, and then meets Maka at the bottom. Maka has the whole fear me scene, and then the movie ends. That's it. Jake walks off and the movie ends. So that's the principal difference. Also, actually, there is another difference, which is that in the original cut of the movie, there are no credits. The movie ends. It's done. We're gone. Get up out of your seats. Go home. In the shorter cut of the movie, the second cut of the movie, there are credits, and under these credits, you see a bunch of philosophers and neuroscientists talking about the ego and explaining what the ego is, which is very much a director being like, you guys didn't fucking understand my movie. Okay, here are some talking heads fucking explaining it to you, you fucking morons.
I didn't know that.
Yes, which is very passive aggressive and very funny, but also I think is another example of this movie like being less of itself and having less bold choices made about it in order to appeal to broader audiences, which it shouldn't even bother trying to do because most people are never gonna get this movie and they're gonna hate it. Okay, we've now properly explained what the movie is. We're gonna take a very short break so that I can do some bodily function stuff and let my dog out. And you and I will meet back in about 5 minutes. Is that okay?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay, great. I mean, I'm back, but I don't necessarily think we're back into it because I'm still eating. So I'll spare the audience the sound of me like crunching pretzels so that I have some carbs to deal with fucking Guy Ritchie.
I'm explaining to people that I got you to watch Bunraku and you have retaliated with Revolver, which I feel like we've had similar experiences on either side of this,
sure.
Which is this is an older movie that I remember really liking, even though it's not good. And then the other person going, this was not great, but I loved it. Like,
yeah, the thing is also, I didn't like this movie. I fucking hated it. I hated this movie so much, but nonetheless, I kept thinking about it. So
yeah. So, I mean, there was some part of it. But also the feeling of there's a little bit of in Bunraku there is I feel like we could have had another like 20-30 minutes about reality blurring in Bunraku, which I'm glad we didn't.
Yeah.
But one day you and I, not on a podcast, will have to talk about it because there's so much. Yeah. And there is some degree of reality blurring in this as well.
Oh yeah, I don't think this movie is meant to be taken literally at all.
Do you mind if I keep talking about it? Because like or would you rather me wait till you can actually respond?
Give me a minute to, or just a sec.
No. Hurry up. Hurry the fuck up. No, I'm kidding. You're fine. Also, happy Pride, everyone.
I had to turn I'm just going to have to deal with fan noise for the second half of this because my office gets hot and I get hot whenever I'm like recording and like, especially if I'm getting animated about this fucking weird ass movie. So like, I can't do it. I just have to turn on the fan. I don't care about audio quality anymore. Okay. So, we can get back into it now.
So what I find fascinating is to draw parallels with the last movie that we watched.
Yeah.
There is some degree of like things being very bare bones, at least in the start.
Yeah.
Where things are sort of generic. And I don't just mean that in the plot. I mean, you'll look at like the setting and you'll be like, yeah, that's a building. Or like, yeah, that's the name of a place. And
interesting. Like, what I think is really interesting is about the beginning of this movie is that if another filmmaker had made the beginning of this movie, I think it would be literally, if the exact same thing did not have Guy Ritchie's name on it, it wouldn't work quite so well. But because it's a Guy Ritchie movie, and I think you can rightly assume that anybody who sees Revolver has already seen Snatch and Lock, Stock, or one of the both, you kind of assume what kind of movie you're getting. And so he starts off by being like, okay, first off, this is a Guy Ritchie movie, okay? We're going to start with the Guy Ritchie, and just like doesn't do any of the work he needs to do to like establish the setting or characters or any of the explanations.
Nope.
Because he just knows.
You think it's forthcoming.
Yeah. And he just like shorthands, like fan fiction style. Okay, first off, Guy Ritchie movie. Okay, go.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's bits where they like reference like other like there's a bit where they're like, oh yeah, you take Slim Biggins. I don't know who that is.
Yes.
They refer to him multiple times
and explains that he's a 4-time bodybuilding champion, and the guy that they've hired to act for the guy does not look like that at all.
Unless that 4-time bodybuilding champion is an expert tailor and has made his clothes look layered while not being layered.
Or like, or he was building his body to a different shape than people are used to. if that one
I'm
line,
a bodybuilder. What kind of body? Dad bod.
Yeah,
like
a kind of round guy. But if they had said,
kind of round guy.
if that line had just been changed to, he was a 4-time powerlifting champion, then I go, yeah, because he looks kind of like a powerlifter. Powerlifters do not look like big burly men. They are squat little guys who are just like their entire body is one big muscle covered with a huge layer of fat. That is how they work. And that guy, he looks like that.
Yeah. He could have said career soldier.
Yeah.
Or he could have given so many shorthands.
A Golden Gloves amateur boxer, I would have believed, there's so many things he could have said, but he says bodybuilding champion. And I'm like, that doesn't make sense at all.
And you're like, no, but he's not though. He's not. What I get is what I think is funny is so that guy dies because he climbs through a window.
Yep.
For some reason.
Well, Jake jumps over a wall, and this guy follows him.
Yeah. It's through a ruined part of a wall.
Yeah.
And it's ruined because on the right hand side of the screen you can see the wall end.
Yeah.
and I remember looking at that and going, we didn't get a shot on the other side of this.
Yeah.
Which means we don't know that this isn't ground level.
Yeah.
So why did he climb through just go around this fucking side?
I don't know.
Dude? Like,
I do like the fact that he climbs over the wall with a loaded shotgun, presumably with the safety off, and accidentally eats the shotgun blast and dies, and that's how he kills it. Like, Jake doesn't kill anybody in this movie. It's like other people die accidentally around him, which that's a very Guy Ritchie thing. That's a very Guy Ritchie moment.
And later the guy who has to tell Maka what happened is just spinning a yarn. I'd have just straight up told him, I don't know, man, this dumbass climbed through a window holding a shotgun and it didn't work out for him.
That's the that's the Coen brothers version of it. Like having to explain and the person being like, that doesn't fucking what do you mean that happened? No, that can't happen. That's ridiculous. And calling out how fucking stupid it is. That's the Coen brothers version of that scene.
That is also a really good bit because what happens is he does start he says the story, it's off screen, and you're sitting there going, okay, we're not going to hear it, and then Maka just recounts the scene.
Yes,
with Jason Statham etc. acting it out.
Yes,
I just found that very funny, especially when he comes through the door and Jake just slaps him. Yeah,
he slaps him around very, very not convincingly. And then he's carries the guy, but you can tell that Jason Statham can't carry this dude. He's like, oh, fucking hell. It's actually a very funny scene. It's one of the things you could have cut that scene from the movie. The movie wouldn't have been any different plot wise if that hadn't happened. But it's funny, so why not leave it in? I guess is kind of the whole point.
But also, I feel like what was supposed to happen was that gangster explained what happened, and we got the scenes that we did get to see.
Sure.
And then Mako was like, "Oh, that's ridiculous."
Yeah.
But instead, because of I don't know what reason, that particular gangster is ADR'd, and it's maybe I only really noticed it because I recognize that guy, and I'm fairly sure he does not have that accent.
The guy who's ADR is not the guy who died. He's a different person.
No. The guy who's explaining it.
And he's not the one. No, that's not. Wait. There's a guy who's really obviously ADR, but that's not the guy who's explaining things.
With the chin, with the big kind of fat guy with the beard, right?
Does the one that is explaining it as an older dude? And I thought the guy you were talking about, who's really obviously ADR, at least the one that I clocked as being super obviously ADR, as a younger dude.
I've sent you a picture. Yeah. This is the guy who explains it to him.
No, the one who explains.
No, it is. Yeah,
is it? Okay.
This scene.
Oh no,
this
it's the guy I'm thinking of is the one right next to him who explains the next scene. The next time an explanation
he explains
happens.
what happens with Sorter.
Yeah, okay.
Who was
I'm sorry.
standing next to
I
him
got it
in
mixed
this
up.
scene.
Yeah.
No worries. There's a lot that happens in this movie that didn't need to happen.
Yeah.
So anyways, what I assume was supposed to happen was this particular character explains to Mako what happens, and while he's explaining the false events, they act it out. But because they decided to ADR him for some reason, I assume that they cut it, but didn't want to lose the footage, so they just had Maka like say it again.
I'd rather listen to Ray Liotta
footage.
probably because he's a much better actor.
Ray Liotta is chewing the scenery a little bit in this movie.
A little bit. Oh my god. He's fucking off the hook. He goes so crazy in this movie.
I love a scene chewing villain.
Yeah.
And like I love Hudson Hawk because the villains in that are just like there's teeth marks on everything.
Yeah.
Like I love it so much. It's not a good movie as well.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll make you watch that again.
Yeah.
So anyways.
Yeah.
But there are a lot of scenes that I think that are like that you're like, that was an interesting choice. There's some editing. There's a bit where it cuts to Jake in a doctor's office.
Yes.
And she walks around and she says, "I'm afraid I don't have good news." And then it immediately cuts.
Yeah.
It doesn't come back to that. I don't think she ever shows up again. It's like a 3-second shot. Not 3 seconds, like 5-10 seconds. She comes around the thing and she goes, "I don't have good news." And then it cuts to him in a bathroom. And it makes me laugh because what was the point? You just cut to that scene.
It's the bare minimum. It's that he just gives he's got broad brushstrokes to sort of gesture at what the plot actually should be. And because again, I don't think that this movie is concerned with the actual things that happen in this movie. There's a plot that happens and it's not what the movie's about. The movie's about its central conceit and then also being a bit bold and weird and having fun, I guess. I don't know. But it's not the literal things that happen on screen are like sometimes the least important part of any particular scene that's happening.
Like and the scenes after the reveal as well are now that you made me think about like so in the David Lynch version of this, what's happening in the latter half is that Jake gets mind powers and starts inflicting Mr. Gold on other people. In what I had interpreted it as wasn't that Mr. Gold has now, or whatever that voice is, has now started tormenting other people, so much as we have only ever gotten Jake's internal monologue. Yeah. And that now we're getting what has been going through Maka's head this entire time.
Yes.
And now we're getting a peek behind the scenes.
That's correct. Yes. That is my interpretation as well. That the reason why we hear it, we haven't heard it before in Maka, but because it's no longer part of Jake's head, in a way, the point of view character in this movie is the voice. It's Mr. Gold, right? So that and there's an interpretation where also Mr. Gold is the audience in a lot of ways, or the author. Like there's some batshit interpretations of this movie. I think we need to talk. I'm going to derail us a little bit. Not derail. I'm going to bring us to a thing that we have to talk about, which is we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about Kabbalah. Or Kabbalah, I don't know how you're supposed to pronounce it.
I'm going to have to leave that all up to you.
No, because a little bit of time. Because here's the thing: if you go looking on the internet for explanations of this movie, Wikipedia will talk about this, IMDb will talk about this. There are several long YouTube videos where somebody will sit down and explain that this movie is all about things from Kabbalah, which is, if anybody doesn't know, it's Jewish mysticism. It is a very esoteric, non-canon interpretation of Jewish religion and principles, and it's got a lot of shit going on. It is an interesting subject, and it is a subject to which Madonna was very interested in the early 2000s. And Madonna happened to be dating Guy Ritchie at this time. And Guy Ritchie
I was going to say,
got a secondhand interest in Kabbalah in this way. So this movie has a lot of Kabbalah symbols in them, and there are parallels you can draw. But I will tell you right now, this movie does not give a shit about Kabbalah. It is not about Kabbalah. It has nothing to do with it.
So before I started watching, you mentioned having to look up Kabbalah for
Yeah.
this discussion.
Yes.
And I had not seen this movie or heard anything about it.
Yes.
So that made me a little nervous.
Yes.
And then there was a scene, that scene at the start where Jake falls down the stairs suddenly. I began to feel real and honest fear. I was like, are we going to watch this man make Kabbalah into Jewish curse magic? Because I don't like that. And so I made that joke to Emma, a friend of ours. And her response was, I think Guy Ritchie's attitude towards Kabbalah is, or possibly was, just whatever allows me to keep fucking Madonna.
Yes.
Which, I get it.
Yeah. Fair enough, man. So,
yeah.
but what, I think it's something I think I would like to if I could change about the internet, I would have told them stop talking about Kabbalah with this movie, because it doesn't have any, like, yes, he's put all this crap in there, but it's the kind of trappings of being deep that doesn't actually apply to his central thesis. I don't know that it hurts the movie, but definitely the expectation that you need to be looking at the Kabbalah side of this movie doesn't track at all. This movie, and especially because, as far as I can, mind you, I could be wrong here. I do not know a lot about Kabbalah. I've heard a couple of things on YouTube about it, and I've read the Wikipedia article about it. But if you look for the concept of the ego within Kabbalah, it doesn't, like, they don't talk about that shit. That's not the thesis. That's not a thing that they do. But, like, that's what this movie's about. It is about the concept of the ego, so much so that when people missed that, he fucking put it in the talking heads of the credits of the next cut. As, like if you need a clear indication of what this is actually about. So this movie might as well be about Freud. Like, he should have used all these symbols for Freudian stuff, which he kind of did, or like Buddhism and yogic traditions or something like from the Near East. That would have been much smarter, but I'm not sure that Guy Ritchie is a smart enough person to have done the research for that shit. He just had an unrelated concept he wanted to talk about, and he was fucking Madonna at the time. So there's a bunch of Kabbalah stuff in here.
Yeah.
I've also been told.
Also, very important to note, I don't know if this is still a trend, but it was very much a big trend in Hollywood at the time.
Yeah.
I'm sure it still is. And
sure.
from what I understand, they all get it wrong.
Yeah.
So this is one of those things where it's like, if a Hollywood, like, established Hollywood person is going to be doing Kabbalah in a movie, they're probably going to do it wrong.
I'm sure.
100%. But Guy Ritchie especially is not going to get it right.
Yeah, very, very much so. I will not claim to understand it, but that's fine, because you don't need to understand it for this movie, because this movie doesn't understand it, and it doesn't care that it doesn't understand it. It's not important.
I did not even notice it.
Yeah, and the answer is that you have to go looking for it, because everybody did go looking for it, I guess. And there is some stuff in there. There's a whole thing about, like, the chessboard having the same number of spaces and the same pattern as the Temple of Solomon, which exists in, just Jewish esoterica descriptions. And then, like, there's things about Avi and Andre 3000 and Big Pussy being representations of the two pillars of energy, and one of them's feminine and one of them's masculine, and there's all this shit that you can find in there, but it doesn't actually pertain very well to the thing. You would be better off, applying the same principles to, like, ideas of yin and yang for those same characters and stuff like that. It's not important. But I needed to make sure that the audience understood that if you go looking for, like, what the fuck is this movie about, you're going to get a bunch of Kabbalah shit that doesn't matter, that nobody fucking gets.
You should that it's one of those things where if you're into Kabbalah, you should not watch this movie.
Probably not.
If you should not watch this movie expecting it to include that information.
No, nobody should expect that. That is not what this movie's about.
And if you don't know Kabbalah, don't use this movie to teach you.
No, it won't. It doesn't actually mention anything about. It's just stuff that's, like, in the background, Yeah, and it's not for it.
It's not good.
Yeah. So, okay, I want to talk a little bit about the way that this movie looks, because it's
so pretty.
Yeah. This, like, Guy Ritchie is a person who typically over edits his movies. Like, he's real flashy about transitions and stuff. That's very much in this movie. But this is the only time that I can think of him being super bold with his visuals and just, like, making fucking wild choices about, like, how he's going to present scenes in these, like, just incredibly saturated monochromatic things.
Yep.
Where like if you want to get into color
there's,
symbolism, it's all over the place because he just will do an entire scene that's just blue, just 100% blue the whole way through. You know,
there's a couple scenes where Maka is all in blue.
Yes.
In I assume a tanning chamber.
Yeah,
like
he's under black light. Yeah.
Yeah. I assume tanning because he's either
completely fucking naked. Yeah.
Yeah.
You see a lot of Ray Liotta in this movie.
Which now that I think about it,
yeah,
makes some of the ending of the like the editing or not editing the editing a little bit. But also like the lighting in the end of the movie make a little bit more sense because the scene where he kills himself, he is also completely bathed in blue, and he is naked and trying to not be, I guess. And like this is him at a very raw state. I think he's in a bathrobe as well because fuck it. And
that the other big blue scenes is Jake in the elevator when he actually confronts the voice, Mr. Gold. He gets into emergency lighting, but the emergency lighting in the elevator is this like deep, rich blue light, and that's the whole confrontation is done under the same thing. So there is something there about with color theory about like, you know, blue representing such and such with this, like, so, but more broadly, it ties him together with those other scenes where like these are scenes about this other unseen character in a way that like, and you know, Jake is called Mr. Green. We've got the character Mr. Gold. Like, there's some color stuff going on there. I'm not sure how much time I want to spend trying to discuss, you know, whether the curtain should be blue or not, but like, he's doing some stuff there. But what I will admit is that like, when he does that, I am sort of captivated by the way the screen looks. Like he goes so far into the saturation, and like the black light, especially those scenes where Maka is lit under UV, he looks so weird that I love it. I want to keep looking at Ray Liotta under black light because he's got veneers, very obviously, and his veneers are fucking bright white, like 100% like a fluorescent light in his mouth as he's talking. And the way that UV reacts with the human skin brings out like subsurface blemishes and stuff, and so you can see all these like splotches, and it like doesn't reflect
all his freckles.
All these freckles and all these things that are just underneath the skin, and so it. And also it like makes them super matte and not shiny at all. And it's very interesting. And it's a very unnatural color palette as well. And I kept thinking about, I was trying to think about like how would I describe the way he looks? And I was like, I kept thinking of words like demonic and otherworldly. But the thing is that he actually looks incredibly, disgustingly human in those scenes.
Yes. Yeah. 100%.
It like brings out how human he is and makes him like, I would imperfect in all of the ways that like would disturb you, you know. It's great.
I would say also vain. And like vain because of the setting. Like base almost. Just very like in a sort of older sense of the word base. But like just very like raw and not a good sense. Like very like this is a man who is greed. This is a man who is
he's venal.
I would say that the like what I find interesting about, because now you're saying it, I'm thinking back to like the other movies of Guy Ritchie's that I've seen, where his shots look so, generally speaking, they're fine shots, but they also display a thing that is, in a sense, mundane.
They're grounded.
Whereas
they're really grounded.
Really grounded. That is not this movie at all, at any point in time. And I really respect that. I quite like, I like both styles quite a bit for very different reasons.
They're trying to accomplish different goals, right? Like one is trying to have like a movie about some shit that happened, and it's like about the shit that happened. And then the other one is like, we have some fucking ideas that we're going to talk about now. Let's not base this in reality.
Actually, real quick. I do want to mention that means like, we've talked before about how things are like with Bunraku, how its position in sort of the works of like cowboy and or like Western and samurai movies does XYZ. With this, the context is Guy Ritchie's other work. And so if this was by a one-off director, this would sort of just be like, okay, like maybe that's the director's style. But in a sense, because you go into this expecting Guy Ritchie with all that color and all the saturation and like just the really the in sometimes almost stylized feel of things.
I mean, like straight up using cartoons at one point. Yeah.
Yeah. It's almost like he's telling you, this is not one of my normal movies.
Yeah.
Don't expect this to be that way.
Stylistically, he's screaming at you, being like, this is not Snatch. This is not Snatch. This is not Lock, Stock. I am not doing that. I'm doing something else. And like,
I wish he had kept doing it. I wish he had gotten better at it over the years.
Yeah.
I wish he had kept making his other movies.
Yes. Yeah.
But
I feel it's some things. Yeah. I wish I could see the next couple of films in this style from him, but he got so burned by it that I don't blame him for not doing it. But like, I'm interested in what because it obviously means there's more to him than Sherlock Holmes. You know, there's more to him. And like, I want to know, because he like, again, this movie is just full of choices, really big, bold choices, and a bunch of them don't work. But
a lot of them,
and especially because they don't work. Like, if anything, if this movie actually has a failure, is that it just doesn't go hard enough in a single direction. It goes hard in a bunch of directions, and it just needed to like pick a couple and go really hard in those directions, because you find the one, find the thing that like makes this work for you, and then just like go ham on it. Because like, well, I think now is a good enough time to talk about the animated scenes anywhere else, because I find them really interesting, but not like
I do.
Yeah, they're such a neat idea, but they're not used enough to be like to understand what they're there for, and they only show up for like one scene. So it just seems like this very strange, weird digression that happens, an experiment that he then doesn't like understand what to do with there. So
and not only that, there is a sense of reality bending, not like in the movie as well. Because they go into somebody's room who's next to the room they want to be in. Yeah. And that guy is watching a cartoon. That is of the cartoon, the next room over. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. And I was sitting there going, oh shit, is there like a thing here? Is there like a deal? By the way, there is like for the record, this is for you and not for anybody else. In Ward, in the follow-up to Worm, there is something that is like that, where they're watching a cartoon, but it's really like a live feed of something.
That's funny.
Anyways, it doesn't matter. So but that doesn't come up ever again. And in fact, it's not just like the things that are happening on the screen are, the cartoon bits, because we see other people be cartoons, unrelated, not in this. In that room, and that guy is never explained why he's watching. He's just a random guy, and like that. I think the only interpretation you can have is that that's not really in the universe what's on the screen. That's just what we, the audience, are seeing, because we're doing a stylized thing now. Like, it's just artistic. It's just like me. So there's also a not vaguely. There's kind of a racist bit in those cartoons. Where,
for real. Yeah,
Lord John,
all of Lord John's content, kind of wall to wall, is pretty bad.
It's not good.
We don't have time to fully address all of that, but
real quick, I do have a question for you. Yeah, was there supposed to be subtitles for Lord John's lines? Because we did not get any of them.
Yeah, I don't think.
Are there?
Yeah, there are. There were,
because I didn't get them.
Yeah, that's fine.
You don't need them to work.
It's fine.
Okay.
The movie is not meaningfully enhanced by it. I think if I kind of like it without the subtitles, because I watched both versions in the last 48 hours, and I kind of like the one where he just talks, and like there's a whole sequence where like they're talking through a translator to Paul, and like he goes on this long thing where he's joking around with his friend, and they're being very obviously like really rude to Paul, and then the translator is like, he says like a single sentence like, how much money, like it's like, which makes it very obvious that like we are in a particular point of view in that scene where we are standing outside of the conversation that happens, I guess, in either Chinese or Japanese. I do not know off the top of my head.
It's Chinese.
Yeah. And so like that actually I kind of really like. I actually kind of liked it when it didn't have subtitles. I saw it again with subtitles. I'm like, this is boring.
There is also a scene later where he's talking to somebody and the music's so loud you could barely hear him.
Yeah.
And it drags without subtitles. It drags on for so long.
Yeah. There's also a scene where he's kind of narrating a thing that happens over some action that happens elsewhere when the assassination attempt on Maka happens, and he's talking over it. And what he's saying there is more interesting than not hearing it, but it's fine. It doesn't, it's not, the movie doesn't substantially change, but there are supposed to be subtitles there. But back on those animated sequences, which is, he's in that, he gets animated at one point. We see reality become very exaggerated within within the framework of those animation sections. They're super ugly. I need to look up, because I would love to find out who did them, because it reminds me so much of the Gorillaz animation that was happening at the time. The band, the Gorillaz.
I know who the Gorillas are. Well, it reminded me of an old PS2 game.
Sure.
Because it's all cell shaded.
Yeah.
And it reminded me of I think it's called 13.
Okay.
Which is an old PlayStation 2 game.
Yeah.
That I had a lot of fun with.
Sure.
Which I will have to talk about some other time.
Yeah.
Because I will get into what little I remember. Anyway.
But like, it's style.
But like the scene with Lord John, he like flexes and he's got like this big tattoo and he like pulls out nunchucks and then like
and swings them around for a second and then instead shoots guys with guns instead.
It's not good.
It's not great.
Also in the animated sequence, Ray Liotta,
his head catches on fire and his hands become submachine guns and he like storms off while shooting the ground. It's so fun.
He gets bigger. His hair grows on fire like fucking Hades from Hercules, and he says something like "kiss my black ass."
Yeah, he does say "kiss my black ass."
Ray Liotta is notably not.
Yes.
And then he like throws his hands down like he just threw something onto the floor.
Yeah.
And instead of like that, his hands just become guns and he like storms off in this Looney Tunes toddler fucking tantrum ass bullshit and like fires shots at the ground. And I was like, what was that?
And like when we also see Big Pussy's character in the in the thing, and he's like turns into basically a gorilla within the context of the thing.
What's that?
I don't know. Like the most charitable.
He his shotgun now looks a lot more like a grenade launcher.
Yeah. Everything's exaggerated.
It's strange. It looks like a game I would either love or hate.
Yeah. And the most charitable read that I can give to the inclusion of these animation sequences is that it is yet more attempt to make sure the audience understands that this movie is not literal. It's meant to be unreal. It's meant to be read at a metaphorical level, at a gestural level, at a sort of higher symbolic system than like the things that are actually happening in this movie. And I think having the expectation that that's what the movie is really useful later on when they start talking about Mr. Gold and, you know, the voice inside your head is the enemy of the whole is the villain of this movie. Like that, you do need to prep the audience for that. And I can understand if that's what this goal was for these animation sequences. I just think that you needed to either do more of them, spend more time doing them, and like pepper them in further through the course of the movie so that we like build it up and it's getting more and more and the world's getting more and more unreal, and then also carry through to the end of the movie with them. Or cut them entirely, because the way that it happens now feels really strange.
It's a little jarring that you're suddenly in cartoon land.
Yeah.
And it just doesn't work.
Yes.
There's so much in this movie, like I said before, I've said a couple times, where in another movie that did more of this, it would go great.
Yes.
But as it is, it's so silly that you're laughing because you're like, it's such a, not silly, it's such a change.
Yes.
That you're laughing because like, what if The Godfather halfway through became fucking cartoons?
Yes.
You'd be like, what the fuck is happening?
Yes.
Like it would be hilarious. But if the whole movie, that's a little bit of a bad example, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like if it was suddenly shot if some like, you know, Oscar winning movie was suddenly shot very differently and like a different Oscar winning movie, it might be, well, okay, that's a bad example again, but you know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I get you. It's kind of like what I was thinking about, where it goes in so many different directions that are all interesting. Yeah. Many of which are interesting, some of which are good. And if it had chosen a couple of those good and interesting directions to go, there's a great movie in there.
Yes.
And instead we get like hints of a great movie, and instead we just get a movie that's just interesting and that I think about a lot, but that is not itself good even necessarily.
We get shards of a couple of different really like good movies.
Yeah.
And speaking of Guy Ritchie, like we do have to mention that he does like to make the same kind of movie a lot.
Yeah.
Or at least he did, especially at the start of his career.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to blame him for that. But I do think it's interesting that he essentially tried to tell this movie, or tried to film like 3-4 versions of this same movie
Yeah.
in different ways at the same time. And I would have been fascinated to see those 4 movies, like those 4 versions of the same movie back to back.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Oh, totally.
Like,
no, that would be that would be fascinating.
Like, how would you change, like this sequence from live action to cartoon? Or how would you change this from typical Guy Ritchie fare to, symphonic music as Jason Statham falls down the stairs, which is still, again, good scene, funny as hell because you're not expecting it.
Yeah.
I was watching it with Lilith and Emma, and I could hear them laughing when that happened, and it made me realize, like, oh yeah, that really did just come out of nowhere.
It does. Yeah.
Because when I saw it, I was like, oh, is he dead? Because like it just shows him like staring blankly with his head against a stair.
It's effective at what it's doing. It's just like it comes out of nowhere and then doesn't kind of return. Oh no, it does return because we see almost the same scene when he gets hit by the car.
Yeah. And there's just a number of like just a number of things where, hey, this is a cool choice. I really appreciate it. Why is that not in the whole movie?
Yes.
That
it should either be the whole movie or it should be not in the movie. Like there's a bunch of stuff. It should be a
different
like
thing.
Yeah.
Like, and it bugs me.
Yeah.
Because there is so much like.
There's a bunch of really cool stuff in this movie, and I
can't even say there's a good movie hiding in this movie.
No,
because you can't cut out things enough.
No.
To make this movie not only make sense, but also be that one good movie.
Right. Yes. It's not long enough. That's why he couldn't cut. He couldn't cut 15 minutes out of it and fix it because it's not over. Even the longer version isn't overwritten. There isn't. It's not 6 hours long. There isn't a bunch of other stuff hiding in there. He wasn't doing everything all the time. It's just he wasn't doing any one thing enough to make it really work.
And again, I would like to return to I think we would both probably have loved to see more movies where he refined this kind of thing.
Yes.
And he drilled down on this.
Yeah.
I would love that.
I'm super interested in it. The idea of a crime film that can go so fucking high concept halfway through. It starts off as objectively, it starts off as a kind of strange Guy Ritchie movie. It's like, okay, we're doing Guy Ritchie.
A kind of like bare bones.
Yeah.
Like
it's a real
like things
stripped
are just
back, and it's a little bit weird, and then it just like goes off the rails plot wise, and is like, we're gonna do something strange and high concept, and I've got a thing to say about it. This movie has a very specific point of view about how you should interact with your own mind. Like it's a very specific thing, and I am here for that idea, and I really am interested in what a story could do with that idea. And the thing that I really take away from this movie is that I do not need a great movie. I sometimes only want one good bit. I just want like one really cool idea. And that is enough for me to obsess about it. It doesn't mean I'm going to rewatch this movie a million times, but I've been thinking about this movie since I saw it in 2007. Like it comes up every once in a while. I'm like, man, what the fuck was Revolver about? And, and to the point where I loathed this movie when it first came out because I was expecting Lock, Stock. I was expecting Snatch. I went in, I watched this movie, and I came out being like, what the fuck was this piece of shit? Oh my God, he wasted my time. But I kept thinking about it. I still kept thinking about it. And as I got older and kept thinking about it, and as I learned more about some of the things that tangentially related to what he was trying to say, it made more and more sense. And I find myself thinking about it more and more and coming back to the same idea, to the point where like I would not argue this is a good movie, but it is definitely a movie that I am kind of obsessed with because of how close.
Has stuck with you.
Yeah, it's stuck with me, and that is a definition, not the definition, but that is a definition of a good movie, one that like you can't get rid of, you know.
And I would go so far as to say like that is why you shouldn't worry about making, you know, like a masterpiece with every single work that you do, every single creative work, because there's going to be something that affects somebody, and hopefully for the best, and I think that it's far more important to get that effect out, than to, I mean, obviously we've all heard "perfect is the enemy of done," but you know, to make the best possible thing you can will, you know, it'll have its effect, but
Well, this is
I think hiding a really good thing in a not hiding, accidentally hiding, I suppose, a really good point in a bad movie, can feel more impactful. Because when something is very expertly delivered, I think we've talked about this. When something is very expertly delivered, I'm sort of just like, okay, cool, no, I agree with that. But if it's delivered inexpertly, if it's delivered in a way that makes me go, well, what the fuck was this? I'm going to be thinking about it so much more. I'm like,
not that I would advise you to deliberately do things badly in order to have an impact.
Please,
but
do the best job you can. But as
a reader, as a watcher, as a consumer of art, I would encourage people to look for the weird, bad ideas that make bold choices, because like those are the ones that you are going to learn the most from in a lot of ways. And like, Revolver is one of those movies. Like I just wish he'd done more. Like if anything, it's just not weird enough. It's just not esoteric enough. And he needed more time. He was coming from a different place. I will also I have to. I'll save that caveat for later. He was coming from a different place, and he was trying something new, and he got his ass handed to him by the critics and by the public at large. And I apparently has learned his lesson and has not come back to this idea, as far as I can tell. I haven't seen all of his work. Maybe he's doing it somewhere else. But like, it's a really good lesson in like, don't fucking listen when people just don't get it. Like if you have the conviction to be like, I've tried something new and I think it's really interesting and cool, and everybody else is telling me it's bullshit, but I understand where it's at, then like, okay, maybe my execution was wrong, but it doesn't mean the ideas are wrong. It doesn't mean that like what is at the heart of it is wrong. And it doesn't mean that I should just go back and only make the movies that I'm comfortable making forever. So like,
I think it's a perfectly normal response to go, well, I'm never going to do that again.
Yes.
But I think it is a better thing to sit there and go, well, maybe I'll return to my normal stuff for now. But I do want to return to this. I think it's better to, I mean, obviously, like
within practical limits, of course. Yes.
Yeah.
But what if he has enough money? He could be doing this as comic books or something, or short films or YouTube,
Like, I've seen Guy Ritchie movies that people like many people who enjoy Guy Ritchie movies. I've seen some that other people haven't heard of. Like 9 times out of 10, if I mention Rock and Rolla, people are like, "What movie was that?"
Yeah, I still haven't seen that one.
It's a Guy Ritchie movie.
Okay,
it's fine.
Yeah,
it came out a couple years later. I liked it. It also has Mark Strong in it.
Yeah. Well, he likes to work with the same people over and over. So yeah, that makes sense.
Yes. And like, but what if after that? Yeah. What if after that he had gone, I want to do another high concept movie. Yeah. Like I want to do another, cerebral piece. Like what if he had done that? And maybe he wouldn't have done the Sherlock movies, but like,
or he could, there's several directors who do, and actors do this too, where they like do a sort of TikTok method where like they do one for the studio and one for me, one for the studio, one for me. So like he could do the Sherlock Holmes movies and then in between do something smaller and weirder. And
make art for you first and everybody else second.
I would love, and because of how much interesting stuff's going on in here, it shows that he has the capacity for it. And in fact, not just a capacity, but kind of a talent for it. He makes these really cool, interesting stuff and is able to go high concept and go weird and make bold choices. And I would love to see those movies. I feel really sad that he apparently tried twice with this movie because he made it and then he remade it for another audience. And it was not. He also learned the wrong lesson, which is that like, because I watched both versions in the last 48 hours, and the original version, the one that was more itself, is I think markedly better and like much more valuable a movie because it goes harder in the thing that it is. And the cut version, which Wikipedia says is the preferred version, but I think that's fucking wrong because it retracts some of what it is, trying to meet an audience that is never going to meet it. There is a huge number of people who are never going to, who, if you showed this movie to everyone in the entire world, 99% of them would fucking hate it. And that's fine. But like the people who will get it are going to like the longer version better because it's more of itself. And that's a really important lesson. It's just like, sometimes you're going to make shit that people hate, but it's important and good. And the people who like it are going to really like it. This is
going to sound like a non sequitur, but it's me.
Yeah.
So it is a little bit, but like I have a point. If I recall correctly, Aesop's fables don't actually have a more like a defined moral attached.
Okay.
And the reason that I was told, which I agree with, is that there is more than one lesson to take from these.
Oh, sure.
And I actually don't remember if this is one of his, but the tortoise and the hare.
Yeah.
The lesson could be, don't squander your fucking lead.
Yeah.
But it could also be, don't give up just because you think it's unwinnable.
Yes.
But it could also be, like, don't assume that like the shoe-in is going to win.
Yes.
So for here, there were a couple of lessons he could have learned.
Yeah.
And I think the lesson that he did learn was, don't do that.
Yeah.
And I think the lesson he should have learned was, don't do it like this.
Yeah. Or like,
do it like he could have looked at that, and he could have looked at the criticisms and said, okay, how do I make this better?
Yes.
How do I stray out of my style without how do I improve my product? How do I improve myself? How do I improve my storytelling? And instead he just got like which I totally understand as somebody who is very much if I try something and I'm not good at it at the first time, I just won't do it. I totally get it.
Yeah, I get it too.
He had the chance to learn, how do I do better? How do I get better? How do I So, okay. Before we've come to what feels like conclusion land about like broadly about this movie, but there's shit that we just still haven't talked about that is real interesting. So like, for example, what the fuck is up with Sorter? I love Sorter. I want a whole movie about Sorter, but what the fuck is up with him? Yes. I said this exact same thing to Lilith and Emma. I was like, I want a whole movie of Sorter.
Yes.
I just want a movie of him.
Yeah.
He has got a character arc. He's got sorry. I want to know what's up. I want to know why he's like, okay, listen.
Yeah.
Okay. The idea of the killer who gains a conscience is not new.
Nope.
It's not even kind of new. But I still want to see him reason through it. I want to see the movie in which he like has a discussion with somebody and they talk about like how do you feel about kids being killed?
Yeah.
And then like how do you feel about so like, and it has to be Mark Strong. If you make anybody else do it, I will find you.
He kills that role. I love him in it so much. And again, they've also like made him deliberate. Like Mark Strong is a guy he's not Hollywood handsome. He's a good looking guy, but he's not Hollywood handsome. And they have like gone out of their way to make sure that he looks as schlubby and kind of messed up as possible. They give him these glasses. They've got him like with the bald with the comb over, but like longer hair on the sides. They put him in these like really dorky clothes and stuff. And the thing is, all of that really like one thing that the stylists and costumers in this movie did was make people who are objectively not good looking, nonetheless super compelling to look at. I really love what they were doing there, and he's an example of it. And like, he just. I'm sorry, and he's got so much. This is a killer 2 moment where he's a side character, and you're like, I want to know what's up with him. Yeah,
I want to know what's up with him.
Yeah, and like one thing that I keep thinking about is that I don't even know where I read this, but I know that I read in several places people interpret him as having already also learned some of the lessons of Avi and Jake.
Oh shit, yeah.
But the thing is, no, I watched this movie and I don't think he fucking does. I don't know where people got that, because
I can see it though. I can absolutely see it.
So like
he is unbothered through the most of the movie,
except for like when he is bothered. The real thing the best theme I can think of with him was they had this whole thing about like, Sorter, you never miss, like that's your whole thing. Sorter never misses. And then except he misses Jake at the beginning, and then he but like he also misses Lord John for some reason once or twice in a really that part was not on him, because he fought. Okay. Yeah. I do want to mention this because it's so fucking stupid. So, okay. He drills a hole in the wall to shoot Lord John through. Yeah. Right. And he drills the hole and he sticks the suppressor through, through. And then he watches the
the security cam, which was a fun little framing device. But the whole time I was thinking, drill another hole in the top so you can aim.
Exactly.
What?
It's dumb.
And so he misses a couple times because,
But like, I'm thinking like, who is he supposed to represent within? Because this movie is not meant to be taken literally. So like, the literal answer is that he couldn't see it because he was trying to aim in a really dumbass way. But like, why is he doing that? You know, what role? But the moment, the thing that makes Sorter like the thing that like his story needs to center around is the moment when he decides, okay, fuck all of this other stuff. I'm going to kill all these gangsters to save this little girl. Like that's his, everything in his story needs to be serving that moment. And I would like to see his story structured more around that, because that's the moment when you're like, oh, he's a character. He's not just some guy who's in the killer, but he like has an arc.
He's not a boogeyman.
Yeah, he's not and he's human. And also this movie at various other points is very concerned with like, because the broader point about like, do not listen to your own ego is that the egos within this movie, everybody's concerned with like me. I need the thing that's best for me. And when people act against their own egos and help other people, that's when they are at their most moral within the concept of this movie. And that's what Sorter does. He finally says, I'm not going to listen to Maka anymore. I'm going to do what's right. And that's when he goes off and has his huge hero moment. And I really like that framing there. You know, the whole thing about making Jake give away all of his money. It's not so subtly revealed that like Jake and Avi and Zach, Big Pussy and Andre 3000 never get the money back. They're supposed to be loan sharks who like loan out money and then break people's legs when they don't pay. But as far as I can tell, they never get. They just give this money away.
Yeah.
Down to
They do kill kill and or injure some people.
Maybe.
Though there is like an old lady that they like give money to.
We get into
this
is where we get into the thing of like how reliable is Jake as a narrator as well. Because there's an interpretation of this movie where Big Pussy and Andre 3000 don't exist. It's all in Jake's head. No.
I disagree.
No, but like, does it matter is the real question.
Or sorry, I agree that there is a version of that, but I don't think it's the version that we watched.
I like the idea that maybe it's true, maybe it's not. It doesn't particularly matter, because we see some of the scenes about like giving the money to people where they happened in different places, where sometimes Avi and Jake are there and sometimes Avi and Jake aren't there. We see a quick shot where not Jake, Avi and Zach, Big Pussy and Andre 3000, where we see Jake carry money to Horowitz and leave it on his doorstep and then walk away, which is not how that money was given there originally.
Oh, that's a good point.
Yeah. So like this whole, there is an interpretation in there somewhere where it realizes that these two characters don't exist. They're in Jake's head. Jake is doing this to himself, and he has already been along this process before.
Well, so here's the thing. When I rewatched on Friday, I did notice one of them, Big Pussy, which is, I can't believe I just referred to a character like that. So he,
I can't. Yeah, the character's name is Zach, but like it's played by a guy who plays Big Pussy in Sopranos.
Yeah, he actually like stops him with people around, and the other people do seem to react to him. Now, again, I think I sent you this message on Discord while I was watching like the first time with like Jake in the elevator scene, just talking about like Guy Ritchie watching Fight Club, like, man, that guy should get a divorce. Like, I just
there's definitely some Fight Club DNA in here.
Yeah, I think it's good, and not good. I think it's good that he did this.
Yes,
I don't think the movie is good.
I
do think that there is like
I don't ultimately care if it's good or not, because like there's interesting things to be taken away from this movie, and it's worth watching, especially with a critical eye. Even if it's not good, even if you don't have a good time, you're gonna be able to pull stuff away from this movie. Yeah, for sure. But for the record, the guy that I keep calling Big Pussy is named Vincent Pastore. He is a fantastic actor. He does really good work in every mob movie you've ever seen he's been in. So I should probably give him credit at some point over the course of this movie.
You know what? I think we should give there should be a disclaimer at the start of this movie, and maybe even this episode of Let's Get Weird About. Which is, and I don't mean to alarm anybody who doesn't know this, Vinnie Jones doesn't show up in this movie.
Yeah, that's true. Fair enough.
It's
barely a Guy Ritchie movie. You only get Jason Statham.
Like,
you don't get Vinny Jones at all.
I was like, what? Why? Where is he? Where'd he go? Is he on vacation? Is he coming? It was to the point where, Jason Statham gets hit by the car in that sort of, is it real? Is it not real sequence?
Yes.
And I thought that was going to be Vinny Jones.
That'd have been so
I just
funny.
assumed it was.
Yeah.
Like, I saw the polo shirt and I was like, oh, there he is. There's Bullet Tony. Like, all right, he's gonna. Oh, that's not him.
Yes.
Okay. Well, damn.
Yeah.
I do love Vinny Jones.
Yeah, I do.
He's also really good in Gallivant, if you haven't seen it.
Oh, okay. He's a surprisingly good actor for kind of the fact that he's a character actor. You know, he shows up, plays Vinny Jones most of the time, but he's actually surprisingly good when he shows up to do other stuff.
I saw him in I think I want to say I saw him in like a soccer version of The Longest Yard.
Okay, sure.
That I enjoyed.
Yeah, he's fun.
That also had Jason Statham in it.
I don't know. I feel like you could maybe if you get one of them, you get a discount on the next one.
Yeah. And yeah, there's so much in this that's very Guy Ritchie, and there's so much in it that's just very not.
Okay, we also have to talk about.
I
think it's come time for us to start talking about Mr. Gold, because I think this movie would be better without the framing of Mr. Gold as Mr. Gold.
Okay.
Or if the movie revolved more around Mr. Gold, then I think that framing works better. This is another one of those things where I think he needed to go harder on it. Like, we learn about Mr. Gold.
He didn't establish
20 minutes into the movie, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. The thing I noticed is that when I was talking about he doesn't establish characters, and then the movie pretends they are. What I noticed was that this movie is a mystery with no reveal, and then a reveal that didn't have a mystery.
Yeah, that's a great. Totally fair.
Which then, you know, is fine. Like that's like a reveal that didn't have a mystery beforehand isn't the worst thing you can do.
Yeah.
But we weren't interested in Mr. Gold that much.
Yes.
In my opinion.
Yes.
And you weren't sitting there going, well, what's the deal with Mr. Gold? Because he's come up twice, and he came up in a secondary, tertiary manner. Like, it's just, we didn't have any questions about like Jake's internal monologue.
No,
we didn't have, or I say I didn't have any questions about Jake's internal monologue. I kind of just went, Mr. Gold, I don't see him. I assume it's Jake. Like,
sure. Or it's Avi, if it's Avi and Zach, you know.
Yeah,
like,
it was such a fast thing because like we didn't get any conflicting information, and that's how or not conflicting information. You either have to have conflicting or incomplete information that is incomplete in a way that is, how do I put this? If you have a series of events, and you're missing a middle event, then you have a mystery.
Yes.
If you have a series of events and you're missing the event at the end, you don't have a mystery.
No, you just haven't heard the whole story yet. Yeah.
You just haven't heard the whole thing.
Yeah.
And so we've been given one piece.
Yes.
And been told, and not but like half a piece. We've just been kind of given like, he's a guy that exists.
Yes.
And we haven't been given something to chew on, something to go, oh, fuck, where's my red string? Like, I got to figure out how this piece connects to this piece.
Yeah.
We don't get that.
If you're going to if you're going to use Mr. Gold,
and says, if
you're going to use him, then like he needs to be mentioned in like the first scene, like the first line of the show of the movie needs to be like, this is Mr. Gold's world and we're just living in it, or something like that, just to like get us going. And he needs to be a constant sort of threat about who is Mr. Gold, having people ask, having somebody who is looking out for him die, there's things to do to make this character more central. Now, your comment about a mystery without a reveal and a reveal without a mystery, I love, because when you get to the point where we talk about where we reveal Mr. Gold is the voice inside your head, right? And he's your ego, and it's the one who's been talking to you this whole time. I love that was something we never questioned at all. This whole movie, we didn't even know that there was a question to be asked, because because there's a lot of crime movies in particular share like this DNA that like you can just have a narrator. It's a thing that just fits part of the genre. And so we never even imagined this was a choice that was going to be plot relevant. It was just a thing that was being done for like tonal reasons.
And I do agree with that. I think that's a very good,
and
like,
especially because the concept that it's talking about, which is that you are not your own ego, the sense of self that you have in yourself is not the whole of who you are. You're not a little voice piloting a meat body. The voice is an emergent property of your brain that exists and is real, but is not the only thing about you, and can in fact lead you astray. That's a super interesting concept. And because by nature of what that is, most people think of themselves as their ego. And so having the moment where you took an unquestioned idea and made it the central question of the film out of nowhere, and then you can look back and say, oh man, there's all of this evidence beforehand, I think is relevant to the mission, to the actual stated mission of the movie of like, do not listen to your ego in the ways that it can lead you astray. And so in that sense, I think that you should just abandon the whole Mr. Gold thing entirely and just be like, that voice, like, it's useful that they have a name for it, and they don't. And I understand why stylistically you wouldn't want to start talking about the ego, because a lot of people would hear that and immediately be like, oh, fucking, like, God damn it, like, I have to hear about this shit now. But like, I understand the desire to have a name for it, but I think that it's the way it stands in this middle ground now, where we adopt a not useful name for it, is not as good as if it had just like, if we just muscled through and been like, okay, let's really talk about this shit, because it's a really interesting idea and it can be super useful. But like, and I'm glad he approached it. I haven't seen any other storytelling really talk about this very much, except for like literal, talks about Buddha, and it's a really interesting way to approach it. And I want to hear that the most of that version of it that this movie could be. I would love to hear that.
Yeah, so just realized I should be recording on Audacity too.
Oh, sure.
It could be.
Yeah. For when I use
feel like
Riverside for like real podcasts, I will have people do backups, but this is mostly just so I can talk to people about movies.
I was going to say this. I'm not going to worry about it right now, because I feel like we're probably nearing the end of our discussion.
We're
or if we're not actually nearing it, we probably should be.
Yeah.
But so I would say that first of all, I do agree. I like the calling into question a trope. I like the engaging with it without directly calling it what it is.
Yes.
And I do like that. However, I realized it as you were talking. There are two major issues that I have with it, because if you are going to use the movie's framing against itself, you either really have to go bare bones in a much different way, a much less direct way, or you have to go through like you said, you have to bring him up much earlier and much fat and like a lot. And the other thing I realized is that we don't actually see Jake have a good time after his revelation.
Yeah, that's true.
Like, I think that in order to really drive the message home of this is something you should do.
Yes.
I think that it has to be further supported with reasons to do it, because as it is, I'm not a particularly observant watcher, as we have noticed from the start of this recording. And I'm not gonna claim I am. I would also claim that I am probably a little bit more observant than a lot of other people. Sure. So I think that we see Jason Statham being like sort of in a Zen kind of trance, and he does almost kind of not really smile, especially in the Fear Me scene. But we don't see much of him after that. And in the longer version, it pays off for him, but it doesn't pay off for him because he's gone through this. It pays off for him because Maka hasn't. And
yes,
and
I think what you're looking for.
Go ahead.
I think what you're looking for, I would agree with, which is the idea that like the narrator, when Jake is listening to his ego, he is limited in what he feels comfortable doing. He has a narrative about himself. He has a narrative about the world. He has things that he is restricted from doing because his ego tells him he can't, and he won't like it, and he shouldn't do that. So like getting in the elevator is a really good example. If you show him after the point where he takes the power back, show him doing the things that he previously said he couldn't do.
Yeah,
that's like the thing, because it's not necessarily that when you divorce yourself from marriage to your own ego, it's not like you suddenly feel happier. You still feel all of the things you felt before. Mm-hmm. You're just no longer governed by this one part of yourself anymore, and it allows you an additional amount of freedom to and distance and detachment from that idea that allows you to act in a way that you might not have been able to before. And it gives you perspective to think about it and handle it. And like that's a really difficult squirrely thing to show on screen, but like I understand that's what you're that would help solidify the idea of why you would want what this movie is asking you to do.
I think also just having I don't want to malign anybody's like ability, because I'm not going to claim that I'm very good at it, and I would do much worse than anybody on these screens. But I think having somebody other than Jason Statham do this would have made that part land well, but the opening parts land worse.
Yeah,
because Jason Statham is the exact person that you want in a normal Guy Ritchie movie. In order for the subversion to work, it has to be somebody like him. But after his reveal, he looks despondent. He looks like he just looks lost. He looks like he's dissociating directly out of his body for the rest of the movie. And if his discussion with Andre 3000 was, you know, at that last one was him just very calmly like, oh, interesting, okay, like just calmly like, oh yeah, like he could still have that sort of despondent look with like the final confrontation with Maka, because that's a kid being involved. Like, I feel like I get it.
Sense.
But to have him just be like, all it would take would just be to have him not look like he's been through hell. Like, I mean, he has been through hell,
and
but
part
like,
of that
just not have him look like he's seen World War I firsthand for 20 years and then had this conversation.
You could do this by not necessarily by having him actually look happier than he ends up looking, but you could start him off in a worse place, where like start them for the first like 3/4 of the movie, the dude looks like he's just rolled out of a trash can, right? Like you can make him look like, give Jason Statham direction to look unhappy, more to look frustrated, to like literally as subtle as like, you know, making one of the decisions like with his styling to make him look worse, make him look like, you know, he looks ugly. And then you can change that in a number of subtle ways so that after that he looks more put together, he looks more calm. And then even to the point where if he looked miserable up until this moment and now he looks just normal, that already communicates what you're looking for. Yeah.
That's exactly what I'm saying. Like, just have him look neutral.
Yes.
Just have him, it's not that, I shouldn't have said unbothered, but he should have just looked like, okay. There is in fact a is it not a colon, a thing meant for meditation. Oh God, I don't remember names and I don't remember exactly how it goes, but student asks master like, oh, how does one achieve enlightenment? And the guy goes, have you finished your food? And he says yes, and he goes, then clean your bowls. And you know, the student was enlightened or whatever. And that's the one that it's the only one I ever remember.
Yeah, and there's lots of stuff about it.
But that's the kind of attitude that I would have expected after something like this, of like, it's not that the next thing is good or bad, it's that the next thing is the next thing.
Yes.
And so when you said like more Eastern mysticism, I wholly agree, because that was I think how it should have the direction it probably should have gone.
Yeah.
And
it's so kind of the decision to use Kabbalah and Abrahamic symbolism instead of Eastern symbolism when you're engaging with an idea that is really prevalent amongst Eastern philosophies and religions is fucking baffling. Like, this should be a movie about the Buddha. You know, like we can, like if you want to have a big fat guy, have the Buddha in it. Like, you know, like instead of big pussy, or have him be the Buddha. I don't know, but like there's things in there, you know. And
but like that,
yeah.
like just having him just be like not looking like, because in that conversation he's sort of staring through the chessboard.
Yes.
Like, just he's got this 1,000-mile absolutely harrowed stare. He looks frustrated through the rest of the movie.
Yes.
Through like the most, he's got the stereotypical, not the stereotypical, the standard Jason Statham scowl, which is great.
Yeah.
It works. But like in that scene specifically, he should have just looked not happy, but less furious.
And then the message that like this is the first step of a journey that will lead you somewhere. You don't have to be there immediately. That's fine. You just need to make it clear that gradation has happened for sure. Yeah, 100. I agree with you so much. Yes.
There's some times where I can't talk about this movie. Damn it. Okay. I can't even say. So the movie is I Saw the TV Glow, which I need you to see.
Oh, okay. I put it on my thing to get auto downloaded, but it hasn't been pulled yet.
Yeah. So I can't even say the thing that I wanted to say because I don't want to give away anything about this movie.
Sure.
So, but once you see it, I want to bring it up.
Okay.
I'll wait right here. Go watch it.
Gotcha. I also we haven't really talked about any of the, but we've started to talk a little bit about like the mysticism around like the idea of you are not your ego and stuff. If the audience hasn't already heard some of the experiments, the like neuroscience behind the idea that you're not your ego, I have a couple of things I want to mention about it, which is that there's a couple of experiments. How much do you know about the corpus callosum?
Nothing. This is the first time I've heard those words together.
Yes. So very famous. If you imagine a brain, you know that there's the two halves of the brain, right? Mm-hmm. And there's a big like a big bundle of nerves that go between the two of them, right? That's the corpus callosum. It's the bridge between the two halves of the brain. And occasionally that can get severed, either through tumors, disease. There was a time where they, in fact, deliberately did surgery to sever people's corpus callosums as a treatment for particularly severe epilepsy. That had some amount of success. It has since been, it's no longer practiced because it's incredibly invasive for something that can be achieved other ways now. But so there is a certain number of people out there who have damage to the corpus callosum, and effectively their left brain and their right brain don't talk to each other anymore. Now, interestingly, this does not seem to bother people at all. Like, they go about their lives in incredibly normal ways, and it does not seem to be debilitating. You can still drive, you can still like hold down a job, you can talk, you can speak, everything seems to be fine. So the brain apparently can operate severed down the middle, just fine. When doing experiments about with these people, what you'll find is there's some very strange things. The way the brain is wired, the left half of your brain controls the right half of your body, and the right half of your brain controls the left half of your body. So you can actually interact with one side of the brain specifically or not. If you show an image such that the person can only see it in their right eye, their left half of their brain will be the one to process that. And that side of the brain can be the one to respond or not. You can do the same thing in reverse. Now, the language center of the brain, I need to find out. I don't want to get it wrong about which side is which. Language center of brain on which side? Okay. The left hemisphere, this side over here, is the one that has the entire language center of the brain in it. It's only on one side, which means your right half, the one that controls the left half of your body, is able to do things and perceive things, but does not have access to language at all. So you can do things like show one half of the body, one half of your brain, like show it some objects, and that half of the brain might pick up an object, decide to pick up an object. And the other half of the brain does not know why that happened. They didn't even know that it did happen until they perceive it on their side of the vision field. What's interesting is they seem to just make up a reason for why that would be the case, despite the fact that that half of the brain didn't have any part of the conclusion, didn't have any part of the decision-making process. They will be like, they will ask you, they give the left hemisphere an object, the left hemisphere picks it up and looks it over, and they ask, why did you pick that up? And the person says, They will make up a reason for why that is the case, despite the fact that they were just handed it. When the obvious answer is, you handed it to me, but they don't know that that happened. And so they backfill in a reason. There's several other experiments that seem to be the case as well, that like we make decisions and then the consciousness comes up with a narrative for why that decision case may be the case. That's
fascinating.
Yeah. I think most people understand that this is true. If you've ever talked to a relative for whom you like have very wildly different political beliefs, what you find is that like they have made their conclusions and then they're backfilling in all of the reasons for why that, that actually, I think it sounds counterintuitive, but like when you talk to people, that actually seems to be the way most people operate. They react on like an instinctual, emotional level, and then all of the rationality falls in behind it. So
my thing at the start about knowing that I disliked Quentin Tarantino and then finding reasons to dislike
yes, exactly.
him.
You have an emotional response. Part of that being your emotional response to the people who like Quentin Tarantino, and therefore you're like, well, now I'm going to hate him because he has a foot fetish or whatever. Like that's absolutely true. There's even an experiment, and I'm going to get the methodology wrong, but because I'm remembering this from like 15 years ago, but if you use but basically decisions happen before you think you make the decision. Even they happen before you think you are deciding.
Yes, I think I've heard about.
I think here's the functionality or the methodology as I remember it. I think I might be wrong, but the conclusion is the same. If you put somebody in an fMRI and you tell them at some point move your hand, all right, you're going to move your hand at some point. Whenever you decide to do it, just do it, and then you show them a countdown in front of their eyes, and they say, and the question is, when you move your hand, remember what number was on screen. So we can time when you think that you've moved your hand. So blah, 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 I do it. And it says, maybe it's counting up. And they say, okay, 11. 11 was the number on screen when I did that. If you're watching their brain in an fMRI, the signals are already going to the hand several milliseconds before the 11 is on screen. Even when you account for the fact that there's a little bit of a lag time between something is shown and our brains perceive it. It happened before the person self-reports that they had even made a decision. The signals are already being sent. So in that sense, your brain, something within your brain has already decided I'm going to move your hand before the sense of self, the narrative inside your own brain has actually come to grips with the idea that a decision has been made and made up a story about when that happened. It's actually lagging enough behind, a measurable amount of time behind that.
That's really
which
cool.
means, which I think is a fascinating thing to think about with regards to the internal experience of what it is like to be a person, because it is like, it feels blatantly obvious that the little thing going on inside my brain that is observing all of the other parts of the brain and feels like it's making all of the decisions and feels like it's observing all the things is itself not actually the thought process that's doing all of those things. It's a passive observer that is coming to conclusions and sort of hallucinating a story to make it all make sense.
I would say it's more like an echo.
Yes, an excellent description of it, for sure. So like,
a little bit less horrifying for me.
Sure, yeah. But like, what that means is that you are not that voice. You are everything about you. Voice is no more you and no less you than your body or the experiences you have or the emotions that you feel. It is one part of a holistic whole. And therefore that also if you believe that is true, that means that you are no longer beholden to it. You can observe the observer at that point and say, okay, well, here's the story I'm telling about myself. And then you can think, is that story actually true? Because I know it can be wrong because it's not the whole of me and it can disagree with other parts of me. And you can think about those things. And that is essentially various parts of a bunch of different kinds of talk therapy, is just separating out the thoughts that you have and the narrative you tell yourself about you from actual reality and what you need to be true and what actually is true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's cool as hell.
Yeah. So
this is also a discussion that is far more cerebral than this movie has earned.
Sure.
Now, that being said, it wants that discussion.
Yeah.
And I think that it's a good discussion to have it. But I do also think that this movie is
it's trying so hard to be smart and it's dumb as shit. No, I'm with you on that.
Yeah, it wants to be. It takes so.
Yeah.
The thing about Guy Ritchie is that his movies take themselves very seriously.
Yeah.
And this movie is no exception, and that's a problem.
Yeah, for sure.
It gets in the way.
It can, 100%.
And yeah, go ahead.
So the defense I would have of it is that, again, I think this is it's just early days. He tried an experiment and it didn't work out for him, and I would love to see how he went further.
Yeah, I would love to see the world where he just went, no, fuck you, I'm going to keep doing this.
Yeah, this movie is not there. I want a movie that does what this movie does really competently, which is why I'm so obsessed with it, because I love the ideas and I love where it's going with it. I love the bold decisions it makes. It just doesn't follow through or execute on them in a way that is super satisfying. But it's there. There is a good movie somewhere in this space. Good movie.
Yeah.
There's a competent movie that does these ideas justice in this space, and I want that to exist very badly. It doesn't. All I get is Revolver instead. So it's this discussion is far more. I mean, we've gone well over the runtime of the movie at this point.
Yeah,
and this isn't the first time we talked about it. We've been DMing back and forth for a few days about this.
Because there was. I don't know if I mentioned it already in this session, but for anybody listening, I was talking back and forth with Scott, and I was like, yeah, like, is it going to turn out that like green is gold and that like these two guys are like the guys that were on the other sides of him in the cell?
Yeah.
And Scott went, said something like, those are true, but that's not the reveal I'm waiting for you to hit. Yeah. And I was like, okay, like I was like, all right, fine, but I tried not to like think about it too hard. I just like let it happen. And then you hit the bit where Andre 3000 talks back or seems to talk back to the voice in his head. I would say that he anticipates what it was saying. If he's not actually inside Jake's head.
Yes.
I think there is a David Lynchian style version of this movie where the two people on opposite sides of him escaped into Jake's brain.
Yeah, sure.
And I would fucking watch the shit out of that. So anyways. And I just sent Scott the word, what? And got back, there it is.
Yeah. Because it's a what moment. And it should be. Realistically, it should be a what moment. That's probably the best possible version of it. And that moment, what, is probably the only, like, the purest this movie gets as to what it's actually trying to do, and the closest it gets to succeeding.
Because it's going for it is going for a what?
Yeah.
What? But instead it gets a what?
Yeah.
Like. And that's the best way I could describe it, is the reveal is supposed to go for revelatory, and instead it's, huh?
Yeah.
Which, but not huh as in that's confusing. It's, huh? We're doing this now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like,
I came to see a marching band.
Turn. Yeah. Like 90-degree right angle turn into a different movie all of a sudden.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which, and again, from that point, so the problem with the reveal is, that you have to position it well.
Yes.
And it's unfortunately not. This is positioned something like 30 minutes before the end of the movie.
Yeah, there's a lot of movie afterwards.
And you hit that point and you're like, oh, fast. Then you look at the runtime and you're like, how are we going to stick this landing? And he doesn't.
Yeah, he doesn't stick. And there's some decisions in there that, like, for example...
It should be within, like, I would say 15 minutes at most of the end of the movie, and it's don't know. I'd say 20. I
don't know about I think you can make that positioning work a little bit better if we stay with Jake, because what happened? We watch Maka instead. We spend a lot of time with Maka, and then we also have that big fight sequence, which Jake's not there. Like, there's a whole big section of the movie where, like, Jake leaves. Jake walks off the side of the movie, and we don't get him back until like 20 minutes later. And what that seems to communicate to me is that the actual protagonist of this movie is Mr. Gold.
I would agree. I would agree.
And that's not the protagonist I care about, because I care about Jake. Jake is the person I've been seeing this whole time, and I've seen him finally overcome his enemy And I want to see how that goes for him. I don't care
Yeah.
about what happens for Mr. Gold or Maka or anybody. I want to see what yeah.
It's actually 35 minutes
Yes.
after that. And the reason I agree. We need to stick with him. I would like to amend my statement.
Yeah.
I said it should be within 20 minutes of the end. That's not necessarily true.
Sure.
35 minutes is still way too soon.
Yeah.
But I would say it should be within not that long from the climax of the movie.
Yes.
And I would say that the biggest, like, tensest moment isn't until pretty much the very end, because Maka has a child with a gun to her head. This is sort of like the big thing, and that's way too long.
Yeah,
that's it, and that's a major issue.
Yeah,
because this is my favorite part of the movie.
Yes.
Like, from the reveal on, I loved it, but I was also like, God, you got to finish this fucking movie.
So like yeah, I mean, like, we need the scene, like, if you could move the scene with Sorter and the girl before the reveal, you know, if you could not just drop the whole Maka thing, if you could combine the Fear Me scene with the scene at the pool with the girl.
Yeah,
like there's probably a structural way to fix this. The problem, of course, is that Guy Ritchie couldn't do reshoots. He could only recut the movie. So I would still argue that the one that you saw, the longer version, is still the better version because it does more with what it's doing. And I think ending on Maka killing himself works, although I think that having, even more than that, I like the scene where he is being confronted about it and that extra tension in a way that, like, him just the other version, the shorter version where Jake just walks away and Maka's left, like, having a breakdown, doesn't narratively pay off in a conclusion. Like, that one, it's not like, oh, we reshifted and now the climax of the movie is this earlier part. No, you just cut the climax of the movie off and now it just ends too soon.
I would say that, like, if they didn't have the scene with them finding his niece, and like, left that at the end, and, like, left that out and then cut at the Fear Me scene, I think that would make sense as far like if they took the longer version I saw and then just cut everything after the Fear Me scene.
Sure.
I would say that I would understand why the movie ended there, and I would get it, and it would make sense as a complete work. But but it sounds like he put the Sorter scene before that, which would leave unresolved threads that are unresolved in a way that doesn't
really messy.
Work.
It doesn't work. Yeah, 100%.
But
and
like,
also if I have problems with the phrasing of kill.
That. Like,
yeah, that's it. I can't. This is one of those things where, like, this should be, in a way, you should kill this darling. This is the best part of the movie, but it ruins the movie in a certain way because you have to put it after. You can't put it before.
Yeah,
and
you have to resolve that. You can't leave that hanging.
If you're going to introduce it, you have to resolve it. But it's so good. It's a really, really good part of the movie. Although the editing in that is very too much Guy Ritchie. But it's really, really good, and I really like it. But, like, you should just cut that. Like, but it's too good. Like, if you cut that, the movie is noticeably worse because it's one of the best things in it. So, like, I've had to cut jokes when writing for breathing for the finale for Breathing Space, which obviously I'm not going to say them here, but like, there are jokes that I've had to cut and been like, this is one of the funniest. So I'll just send it to people and be like, this is really fucking funny. I found it hilarious. I have nowhere to put this. Yeah. And sometimes it works. Sometimes it works out well. I think I told one to Jack, and Jack was like, I'm putting that in my scene immediately. Yeah. But like, in this case, I would have cut it, maybe added it as like a bonus scene into like a DVD or something. But like, if you cut that scene, what's left in the movie? And like, it's kind of it kind of drags and it's funny, and you don't have a big action set piece anymore. And like, I understand that, like, this is a situation where, like, probably it should have been cut way earlier. Like, it should have been cut at the script stage, or it should have been fixed earlier. But like, when you get to the point where you've already filmed the movie, you're fucked. Like, you've already like the problem was the call was coming from inside the house. Like, you're already dead. Yeah. Like, that scene happens, and it's one of my favorite scenes in the movie. Sorry, it's one of my favorite scenes in a different movie. Mm-hmm.
It's one of my favorite scenes in this movie that is not of this movie.
Exactly.
It's
Sorter's movie. I want to see the Sorter movie. Yeah.
I would love to see the Sorter movie. Mostly because I want to see Mark Strong be a bastard.
Mark Strong is such I don't know if he's underrated, but I love him. He's one of those actors that like I feel like he should be doing more cool stuff than I see him doing. Because he's so good. He's like weirdly charismatic and very strange, and I love him.
He's charismatic in a way that almost makes his like schlubby look not work.
Yeah.
But at the same time, he still does like the only reason that it didn't work for me immediately is because he wasn't talking a lot immediately.
Yeah.
But when he talks, he has a very like nervous stutter.
Stammery. Yeah.
Yeah. And he makes that work to make him seem. I'm not trying to like throw shade at anybody with who has a stammer or a stutter, because that's a neutral thing.
But it's definitely not a thing you'd expect to see in a cool as cucumbers assassin. It's very contradictory towards the tropes that we're expecting.
Right, which makes then the other or incongruous pieces click for me. It's not that having a stammer makes you like a schlub or like a loser or like or whatever, but it was him selling that he is not your typical looking guy.
Mm-hmm.
I would love like a movie where he's he doesn't even have to have his own movie. He just have him be so much more prominent. Yeah, like just have him be like the enforcer, like the what's the trope? He's the dragon.
He's the dragon.
The big bad evil guy's like second in command, who is the real super danger. Yeah. He's killer too. I'm sorry I keep returning to it, but it's the movie that I know that we both have watched.
Yeah.
So like it's and we don't get enough of him. Yeah. We just don't.
Yeah. I agree. I would cut Paul and I would bring him back in, and like you could rebalance it. It's the flaws in this movie are at the like they're at the bone stage where you have to like really, this thing needed more drafts at the like script level before it could go on to be a better movie, or just take these same ideas and make other movies with them. Maybe this is a burn it all down and start over from the ground up kind of thing.
Like I was gonna say, like scavenge it. Like this is a thing that you look at and then you I don't know if this is an actual thing, but you take your script apart physically and say, this scene is good for this, so I'm gonna go but like having them in pieces and identifying which pieces work together. Yes. And and he tried to do so much because I also, maybe I'm projecting. Yeah. But like I recognize or project that feeling of like, I want to do so many things and I want to like, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this. And you have to pick one. Yes. And you just can't. Yeah. You can't just try to do all of them at once. Yeah.
You've only got 2 hours. You've only got $10 million. You've only got this much time on the earth.
Only $10 million.
Yeah. I think it was actually 13 million pounds, which is maybe a little bit more, but yeah.
Yeah. Which for a movie, that is sort of it's only this much.
Yeah. That's relatively cheap, even for 2004. Yeah.
Yeah. But like Guy Ritchie, I assume you're listening. Go ahead. Please. And do this again.
Yeah, like
please.
The lesson is not that like this is not a thing he's good at. It's just a thing he's not good at yet. But like yes. It seems weird to say this about a guy who's made 30 films and like has success beyond my wildest dreams in all the material ways, but like he's a promising young director in this way. Like he's got all of the things there that like this could be to make really interesting, compelling, to be a whole different kind of director. And the fact that I know he's capable of it makes me so much more interested in him as an artist entirely.
Agreed.
This is in a lot of ways, Revolver is the coolest thing he's ever made. It's the worst movie he's ever made, probably, but it's the coolest thing he's ever made.
Yeah. Okay. I would say up until I saw Revolver, the worst thing I could say about Guy Ritchie was that he was boring. Yes. And then if I had only seen Revolver, the worst thing I would say about Guy Ritchie is that he made Revolver. Mm-hmm. And now currently I would say that the worst thing I can say about Guy Ritchie is that he didn't do another Revolver. Yeah. Like
the promise is there. There's the soul, the heart, the really cool. Like there's an art
Give me
house
the
guy.
Weird. Come on, man.
Yeah. And it's just that's not, you can't work for Disney while you do that, unfortunately.
What? You can't have
he directed Aladdin.
I'm sorry.
The new one.
Oh, I didn't know there was a new one.
Yeah.
The
one with wide blue.
Oh, that's
Will
right.
Smith.
Yes. I forgot that it existed.
Yeah.
I did not see it.
I didn't see it either.
I had better things to do with my money.
Yeah.
Then again, I don't see movies a whole lot. Again, I only recently saw the movie that I saw recently. I saw The TV Glow. It was probably the first movie I've seen in quite a while. Which I was this close to being like, no, Scott, we are not watching any of this list of movies. You're going to go see I Saw the TV Glow, and we're going to talk about that.
Maybe that's season 4. Maybe that's season 4.
Yeah. Because it really is having like an effect on me.
Cool.
As I go, like I have had days where I have gone to bed and I have repeated the lesson that I pulled from that movie to myself.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
It's so good. I legitimately don't want to say anything about it. I don't even want to say like audience things.
Sure.
Just because I want you to go in cold.
I know the instinct. Yeah.
But also, like my girlfriend Dee, she likes that director.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I asked her about it, she was like, "Oh yeah, like I'm trying not to learn anything about it because this is the kind of movie that I want from this director, where I just get to Anyway.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So we've I feel like we've drawn conclusions. I want to see if we can kind of summarize things, which is that if you can watch 2 things you want to take away from Revolver. I would recommend you watch it, and it's a movie that I would recommend you watch with a critical eye, because it's doing interesting things. So, but I would actually
say that any movie that you hear a really bad review about, you should see yourself.
Yeah, that's pretty reasonable. Well, and like what?
Unless it's like this is real racist, in which case,
or like I don't know. The worst thing you can say about a movie is that it's boring. This is why Manos: The Hands of Fate is a really terrible movie. It's not that it's a bad movie with bad production values. There are really interesting movies with bad production values. It's that movie is fucking boring. Mostly because they forgot to put the opening credits on, so they're literally watching. Yeah. Okay, but
yes. Sorry, continue. Go see it. Make your own decisions.
Yeah, make your own decisions. And the thing is, if I'm going to take away stuff from this movie, I still am super obsessed with the idea of a movie that does what this movie does, where it turns you on the narrator in a way that's super cool, and playing with the narrator as a plot element is super cool. And also that like there is so much value in making the movie that a lot of people are going to hate, and just having the like fucking brass balls to just commit to like, I can't make this movie popular or story or art, but like I'm going to make the thing that I want to make for me and for the like 5 people who will get it, because there's a version of Revolver that is that, and it would be better, if it just didn't try. Yeah, if it didn't try to appeal.
There are things like this that are important in the messages it sends.
Yeah.
And there are things like this movie specifically, that are important for the making.
Yes.
It is important because he made it.
Yeah.
It is important because it's Guy Ritchie that made it.
Yeah.
And I really cannot stress enough how much this starts to feel like Guy Ritchie at the start, and you see him in it, but you also get to see a completely different attempt at his own style.
Yes.
And I think that has a lot of value, and it just really makes me sad that he got scared away from it.
Yeah, I'm thinking about you're a Tumblr person, so do you know the peacock feathers thing? Where
I'm sorry.
Okay, so there's a Tumblr post that floats around every once in a while, which I think about a lot, which is talking about like the best piece of artistic advice I ever heard was I was in an art class, and this.
Oh yes,
and one girl. I'm just gonna tell it for the audience. And so one girl was like starting to experiment with some like rhinestones and peacock feathers in her like mixed media thing, and the art teacher sees it and goes, "I hate that," or no, I don't like this, but I can see that you like it. and I'm never going to like this. Like it's an aesthetic style that just does not appeal to me. So here's my advice to you: make me hate it, because right now I only dislike it, and that you need to make the version of it that like sings to you. You should be so unapologetically like in love with this idea that you're doing that I loathe it.
Yeah,
and
I think the teacher had even actually just started off by saying, I dislike this style.
Yeah,
but I want you to make me hate it.
Yeah, I want you to make me hate it, because
just straight up.
Yeah, you should be so unapologetically. You should do this with such brazen like boldness that I have no choice but to like despise it, because then it will be the most you that you want, and it'll appeal the most to the people who actually do like it. You shouldn't try to please the critics who are just never going to get it. And just like sometimes you just for some kinds of art, not maybe this isn't always universal, but there are times you just like need to say fuck it. People are going to hate this, and they're going to be right to hate it for themselves. But there are going to people there are the people who will get it will love it. Yeah, and that's what this could have been.
Yeah, and frankly, the problem with Revolver is that he didn't get to cultivate the audience, because he stopped with this one. He didn't get to cultivate an audience that would love it, that would love that kind of movie. Yeah,
I mean, like, look at what happened. I mean, just to compare, do you know Yorgos Lanthimos at all?
This sounds familiar, but
he's the guy who did famously. He did, or the one that I say famously. He's done The Killing of a Sacred Deer, The Lobster, Poor Things, I think, is his most recent movie. He's about to release another one. So
I did see Poor Things.
Okay, I haven't seen that one yet,
but I did see it.
Yeah. I've seen a couple of his things, and everything I see from him, I'm like, this dude is so hyper focused on what he wants to make. He has this like very clear vision of what he's doing, and you are going to either be on his wavelength and meet him where he's at, or you are not. You're gonna be miserable watching these movies, because they give not a single inch to people who are not there for it. And
I would agree with that.
Yeah, that's his whole thing. And like, despite the fact that I kind of feel kind of middling about The Lobster, I think about that movie a lot because it's so very much him. And the people who like him love him, and he's found the audience. He keeps making movies, and he's getting more success over time because he is able to cultivate that audience of weirdos who just like his stuff so much. And for those people, Yorgos Lanthimos is the director, because he is like, he's on their wavelength and willing to cater to them, and they're not going to get it from anybody else, because nobody's going to do the weirdness that he does. And it's really like, I so respect him, and I wish that Guy Ritchie had learned the same lesson, because it would be very cool.
Yeah. I was going to say, I have seen Poor Things. I really don't like it. I have a lot of rants about it, but that's exactly it. Like, I have a rant about it.
Yeah.
Like, I have now admittly, it's not stylistic choices for the most part.
Oh, his stylistic stuff, they'll get a whole separate thing about it. We can't talk about it.
But like Guy Ritchie should have absolutely just gone, all right, like, you didn't like this.
Yeah.
Let me try it.
Yeah. If he cared about these ideas, then like the next version should have been longer. The next version should have had more weirdness and be more stylized.
It should have been more cerebral. It should have been. It should have kicked off with that.
Yeah, and
which probably would have led to the both of us talking about him a lot more.
I mean, like, I can't really fault him for what he's done. He's obviously had lots of success. He's made tons of movies. He's all the more power to him. I just mourn a little bit the loss of a different director that we didn't end up getting. And maybe it turns out that maybe he was miserable. So there is a ghost hanging over the entire conversation, which is there's a co-writer on the movie, which is Luc Besson. Luc Besson being the guy who did La Femme Nikita, The Professional, and The Fifth Element, which are absolutely fantastic movies from the 90s. Luc Besson has then gone on to make a bunch of stinkers, and is also just a complete fucking. We've written him off because of his personal dealings. How about that? Yeah. I will not go into detail about what that is, but you can guess.
I remember hearing some of them.
Yeah. Yep. So it's entirely possible that what we like about this movie was Luc Besson's influence, because he is weird enough to do this kinds of shit. So maybe Guy Ritchie, just to say that maybe Guy Ritchie never really wanted to do what we wanted to see out of this movie. Maybe this was something he did as an experiment and he didn't like doing it, so he's gone off, and maybe he's very happy. So more power to him. But the lesson that I take away from this movie is instead that don't mollify, don't mollycoddle it. Just like go fucking like when people
go hard on it. Yeah.
If they don't get it, if you can tell that the critics don't get it, don't expect them to get it, and just find the people who will.
Yeah.
All right. And on that note, we gotta fucking end this sometime. So
so we have to end it today sometime. Would be nice. I do have like a party I want to go to, given that it is Pride. Happy gay, everybody.
Happy gay, everyone.
It's always lovely talking with you, Scott. I hope you know that.
All right.
And we will get another conversation about some movie or other. I hope that the next movie that we talk about is what's the word? Good.
Thank you, audience, for sticking around and listening to another episode of Let's Get Weird About. And thank you to Hera for, God damn it, watching Revolver twice in 2 days. Like, that's just fucking heroics for a guest, right? So, like, go in the links and, like, find her stuff. Anyway, if you want another movie, which is definitely not good, but also a book, then next week we're going to be talking to Jack about Starship Troopers. And if you know anything about my conversations with Jack or my relationship with Starship Troopers, then strap your asses in. Let's Get Weird About is a production of the Library of First Knowledge.